Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. As you can see in the picture today, let's start the story of what if Issei helped Basara to overcome his trauma. Sob Kurumi. Kurumi. Sob. The screams of a young girl sounded in front of the. Around them, what should have been a large forest was now just a huge crater that stretched several meters deep and dozens of meters far. The boy was stunned. Moments ago, he'd been playing with his friends, and now he was plunged into death and destruction. There were no bodies, they were all disintegrated. Well, almost all of them. Kurumi, the girl behind the scream while holding a body while crying. You did this. You killed her. She pointed at him, and he couldn't deny it. He had killed her and everyone around her, leaving only her and him alive. The most painful thing wasn't that she continued to scream and reprimand him. The most painful thing was that she could still see the sister he had taken from her, a muffled scream that remained silent in lamentation. Her soul twisted within a green gem embedded in a massive silver sword, the sword he held. Basara Tuju woke up abruptly. He gasped repeatedly, calming his breathing, his heartbeat, and his body trembling. No matter how often I see that dream, I just can't get used to it. He raised his right hand and brought it to his face. I didn't find the gauntlet or the sword, but the scars on his hand reminded him that step. Basara gave a heavy sigh, then stood up and walked down from his room with a neutral expression. He never spoke about that dream with his father, and he really didn't want to. It was just a minor, unimportant issue. Good morning. Jean Tuju, his father, was a middle-aged man who was preparing breakfast and accommodating him with a smile. Did you sleep well? I know it's been hard having to move, and now you're going to a new school. Basara shrugged. He didn't have any friends at his other school, so he wouldn't really notice the change. I'll be fine. Are you sure? I remind you that in a few days I'll have to go on another mission. Basara shook his head. I know this is very important. After several years, you finally find clues about her. Jean gave him a bitter smile. Basara was very mature for his age, unfortunately more mature than he should be. They both ate happily, talked about their new lives, and otherwise it was a normal Sunday breakfast, until Jean decided to ask, Hey, remember you asked me for a little sister? Basara stopped chewing, looking at his father with a confused expression. I didn't say that. Did the spices mess with your brain? Basara spoke with slight mockery. His father looked at him with what seemed to be deception. What a weak reaction. She's a little sister, you know, a baby sister. It's something many only children would wish for. Do you know how happy I would have been to have a little sister? Or even parents. Jean was an orphan. One who was left in an orphanage as a newborn. Normally it would have been a matter of time before a family adopted him, but the Tuju clan recognized him along with other orphans and took him to the village to raise him as a warrior dedicated to keeping the supernatural at bay. I don't know, but I just didn't say anything like that. Now, where are the pickled vegetables? The bottle filled with curry seasoning had disappeared from the table. I continued looking and found her father holding the bottle with a triumphant smile. Hey, let's talk a little more enthusiastically about a little sister. Basara sighed. He couldn't believe his father was trying to discuss the benefits of a little sister while they were eating. Okay, did I really say I wanted a little sister? Don't you remember? You said I want a little sister. With your eyes shining, it was like 10 years ago, as if I'm going to remember that. At that time he would have been 5 years old. He just said a childish nonsense. Come on, don't get mad. Just answer. Would you like to have a sister? Jean asked as he passed the bottle of pickled vegetables to Basara. The slightest sigh. I don't know. I've heard that sisters aren't exactly nice, that they're more annoying and spoiled. What I knew came from boys at his previous school who seemed to have personal problems with their sisters, so that could be debatable. Jean looked at his son with a shrewd tone. So, if this little sister were sweet and tender, would you like to have her? I guess. Basara said more to get his father talking than out of real interest. Then congratulations. You now have 2 new sisters. Somewhere, a beautiful woman with long crimson red hair, sea blue eyes, porcelain white skin, and large proportions was sitting at an elegant black desk. The girl was reading several documents her servants had given her. She was managing the contracts made this week, almost a third less than the previous week. The girl narrowed her eyes. The decrease in her weekly contracts was constant. It seemed that humans aware of the supernatural were less interested in contracts with demons, even more so when it involved a young novice like her. If his number of contracts continued like this, his parents would continue to question his management skills and insist on speeding up his commitment. We're doing this for your own good, daughter. We want you to have a bright and stable future. I mockingly imitate his father's voice. Who would he want to fool? All they'd want is a steady stream of income for the clan. She sighed. She needed to earn enough merits to convince her parents to cancel that engagement. He had tried investing in human stocks with his personal reserves, but most of them ended in failure, and contracts with humans were becoming rarer. At this rate, he would have to fight for his right to freedom in a raiding game. She hated that her cute servants had to carry her problems, and although she was sure that they would brave the heavens for her, she focused on training herself and improving her power. But at the rate things were going, she would be forced to ask her brother for tutoring, which she didn't want because it would put him in a situation where the nobles would brand him for his obvious favoritism to his former clan. The girl continued reviewing the documents and met some individuals. They were papers requesting permission to inhabit their territory. They weren't anything particularly unusual. A magician wished to stay in Qua village with his family. The mage's surname will surprise you, mainly because it's the same as his tower and the human nicknamed God of War, but that's all. He found nothing unusual, so he took an elegant knife and pricked the tip of his index finger. A drop of blood fell on the papers, forming a red seal bearing the Gremory clan emblem. And with that done, Rias Gremory had authorized asylum for Basara Tuju and his new family. Basara Tuju was not in a good mood. His father had just told him this morning that he had met a woman a while back. Something had happened, and he had asked her to marry him. They were currently in a restaurant waiting to meet his father's fiancée and her 2 daughters. To be honest, Basara wasn't angry about his father getting married. It had been several years since his mother had died. He was happy that his father had rebuilt his life, but please, why didn't he give him more notice? Basara was a nervous wreck, constantly glancing at the entrance door and the tables. He watched many people pass by, from families to teenagers to the elderly, but the ones who intrigued him most were the pairing of a red-headed girl and a short albino girl. Daring. Hearing the bell, Basara quickly looked at the entrance and saw a man in a suit walk by. Come on, calm down. It's not like the apocalypse is about to happen. It's easy for you to say. Basara compulsively tapped the table with his fingers while in his mind he imagined hundreds of different scenarios. You know what? I'll go wash my face. Basara stood up and walked to the bathroom. He opened the door and stepped inside. Hey! Basara Tuju raised his face and froze. In the open room, there was a girl. At that moment, an awkward silence fell over the small room. The girl had leaned forward slightly. Her skirt rolled up, and both thumbs were in her white panties, either pulling them down or up. The girl's mind went blank from the abrupt flow of events, and she stared at him completely dumbfounded, unable to utter a word. Basara froze, frozen. A quick glance at the sign on the door confirmed that this was a mixed-gender restroom. Unfortunately, it had a flaw only the regular guests knew about. The lock was broken. Underneath the mixed bathroom sign there was a small message that said please close the door properly, a message that Basara ignored. Basara hurriedly tried to close the door, turn on his heels and escape like a coward, but suddenly he heard a certain sound. Basara reacted instantly before he could shout. Hey, wait! Basara barely managed to muffle his scream and sighed in relief for now. Wait, what am I doing? Before she knew it, Basara had fully entered the bathroom and covered the girl's mouth like a rapist. That was not right. Sorry for scaring you, but please listen to me without making a fuss. This wasn't on purpose. It's an unfortunate accident, a misunderstanding. Basara explained the lock's defect and the notice on the door. He tried desperately to convince her. There was no aggressor here. Just 2 unfortunate victims of the whims of fate. At that, since Basara's explanation sounded logical, the girl believed him and relaxed her body soon enough. I guess you understand now? At his question, the girl nodded, showing her understanding. When Basara timidly withdrew his hand, the girl corrected her posture and laughed with a fufu. A bright smile that seemed like the prelude to the beginning of a friendship between 2 unfortunate people. Good. Apparently, her sincerity was conveyed, and she calmly grasped the situation. Enthralled, Basara also flashed a smile with an awkward haha. At that moment he received a blow to the cheek. Basara crashed into the door, and of course the faulty door opened. Basara crashed into the door and fell on his bum. Placing a hand on his cheek, Basara was surprised at the burning sensation of pain. Because? What do you say? The corners of the girl's lips twisted in anger. First, you look at a girl in the bathroom, then you walk in, cover her mouth, and try to make excuses. Put your hand on your heart, and think carefully about what you've done in hell. As if she were going to give him a final blow, the girl raised her leg very high, with enough flexibility and control to know that this blow would not be good at all. What are you two doing there? A familiar voice sounded from somewhere, probably coming to find Basara. Dad, Mr. Jean. After returning to the table, Basara was standing in front of two girls. One with long red hair and a shorter one with long silver hair. The tallest was Mio Neruz and the shortest was Maria Neruz, and at this moment the first one was giving him a look of contempt. It was understandable, but undoubtedly uncomfortable. Sorry Basarazin. Maria showed a friendly smile. We told the waitress we were meeting someone, but it seemed she didn't know anything about you, so it was an employee error. That explained why they weren't found immediately, but it still didn't solve the problem. Basara looked at Mio uncomfortably. Sorry about that. When Basara spoke with a sigh, Mio nodded satisfied and said I forgive you and brightened her expression. By the way, where is your mother? Will she come later? As interesting as the experience of talking with his new stepsisters was, Basara was intrigued by the absence of his mother. Without her, the reunion lost much of its meaning. Yes, I forgot to mention something to you. Jean spoke. His mother, Chihaya, is abroad for work. That? What had Basara just heard? As bad as it sounded, the partner of a newly married couple was abroad? Dad, I need to talk to you for a moment. Basara pulled his father and dragged him to where Mio and Maria couldn't hear them. Can you explain to me what all that means? What thing? I don't know. What if your future wife doesn't show up at this meeting and is also abroad? That certainly sounded very fake to him. But Jean didn't seem to be fazed by his words. Dad, please tell me they're not making fun of you. Haha, don't worry. Do you really think they could fool me? Jean was certainly not someone easy to deceive, he was someone very cunning. So why didn't we have the meeting when she got back? I'm afraid there are reasons to rush things. Jean changed his smiling expression to a serious one. You know, a few days ago, the poor things were attacked by a creepy guy. When I first found them, that guy tried to make a move on Mio. Of course, I knocked his teeth out. That made Basara tense. He looked in the direction of the girls, noticing that they were devilishly beautiful, and he didn't find it strange that someone would notice them. But if they really suffered a mating UAL assault. Ugh, now I saw why Mio reacted so violently. Maria even stopped going to school out of fear. You can imagine what's hidden behind that smile. That's why we met with them. Chihaya asked me to look after them while she was abroad so she wouldn't leave them alone. That made some sense. Sure, assuming they knew Jean well enough that they didn't feel like they were hanging out with a couple of strangers. And I suppose they'll stay and live in our house. Correct, Basara sighed. He didn't quite agree with his father, but he trusted him. It's okay, I just hope you don't disappear out of nowhere and go on your mission without warning. You'd make the girls very nervous. Jean raised his left hand and placed his right hand on his chest. Promise of honor. With that said, they returned to their table and ate together. Later Basara would realize that his father lied to him with every word. Clank clank. The sound of steel clashing with steel sounded like a delicate melody. Spear and sword clanged at specific moments. Take this. A blond boy thrust his spear in a frontal attack. Clank. Little Basara struck the tip of the spear with his sword and deflected it to his left, then took the spear shaft with his bare hand and began to struggle with the blond boy for control of the weapon. Crank. Also, Basara struck the blonde's fingers with his blunt sword, breaking a few and forcing the blonde to drop the spear. He spun the spear in his hand and pointed it at the blonde. He slammed the blonde's feet with the spear, knocking him off his feet as he moved to point the blade of his sword at the blonde's face. Having disarmed and knocked down his rival, Basara showed a triumphant smile. Gain, Takashi? Takashi sighed heavily on the ground. I'm starting to think you're a cheater. Basara blinked, to which Takashi pointed at him accusingly. Sorry? You're too strong. It doesn't make sense that you're so strong. How come we're the same age and you can already accompany the adults on missions? Basara's only response was a shrug. Ever since he started his training, he'd always been stronger than the other children, faster, more skilled. Recently he had even accompanied the IU on missions to contain or exterminate supernatural threats. Takashi looked at the sky and sighed with resignation. Then he looked at the brown-haired boy and noticed that he offered him his hand to get up. The little boy smiled, took his best friend's hand and stood up laughing. Metere, killer! Ah! Basara woke up screaming. Hey, Stromp! Something fell to the floor thanks to his rude awakening. Basara quickly looked for what had fallen, and was greatly surprised to find Mio wearing shorts and a yellow shirt. The girl got up sob-ing as she looked at Basara in a bad mood. What's wrong with you? Why did you knock me down? Having been caught off guard, Basara only managed to say, I had a bad dream. Also, why were you on top of me? Mio's face flushed, and she tilted her head with a humph. I heard that guys like being woken up by a pretty girl, so I decided to give you a treat. Basara blinked. Was she really planning to wake him up like in an eki anime? You shouldn't do that to just anyone. It doesn't bother me, but it could cause a lot of misunderstandings, Basara commented as he stood up. You might accidentally UGK. While stepping onto his bed, Basara slipped on his sheets and ended up falling on Mio, causing her to say Kia. After a few sobs, Basara realized he was standing right on top of Mio. Their faces were so close they could feel each other's breathing. Both pairs of pink and emerald orbs looked deep into each other's. Ah! A sob escaped Mio's lips, and she looked at him in shame and anger. Shame for having let out a whisper of pleasure, and anger because Basara's hand was on one of her bobas. Gee, get off, you pervert! Mio took advantage of his position and with his knee hit Basara's manhood, who was paralyzed with pain and was moved by Mio, who got up and left the room, but not before looking at Basara angrily and saying, If you do something like that again, I'll kill you 100 times. And so Mio left, leaving a sore Basara sob-ing on the ground. I'm already regretting having a sister, Basara complained as he walked down the stairs and headed to the kitchen. Good morning, Basara. Good morning. Basara greeted Maria as he went to the refrigerator to grab a carton of milk and pour it into a glass. Breakfast is almost ready. Thank you, PFFF. Turning his gaze, Basara couldn't help but spit out the milk he was drinking when he saw Maria cooking with only an apron on. Something wrong? Maria asked. Something? Why are you dressed like that? Basara pointed at her, very sure that this was too illegal of you. This? Maria looked at herself, immediately noticing what Basara was referring to as a devilish smile formed on her young face. So that was it, hee. Maria's smile widened even further, which Basara considered a sign of ill omen. His bad omen came true when Maria spun around while laughing, revealing her body without the apron. Well, that's a shame for you. I have clothes on, Maria said laughingly, showing that she was wearing a swimsuit, to Basara's relief. What's up? Are you disappointed? I bet you were hoping to see me without clothes, pervertido. Maria's teasing caused Basara to rub his temples in his head, aware that his new life would be quite difficult. Why in God's name are you cooking in a bikini? Hee, nothing in particular. I just think it's more relaxing to hang out at home without clothes. I wore this bikini because I know walking around naked would upset them. And did you think that wearing a bikini makes you less strange? Where the hell did you learn that? By Mom, her mother? Basara was deeply disturbed that a mother would practice nudism in front of her daughters, especially one as young as Maria, and even worse, that she would pass this practice on to the child. Would the mother do the same when she moved in with them? She didn't find it in him to ask. Hey, what are you talking about? Mio asked as she walked down the stairs. Basara is telling me how much he would like to see me naked. What the hell was he talking about? Basara gave the girl an incredulous look. She just winked flirtatiously while sticking her tongue out. First you push me down, and now you want to see Maria naked? Wow, bro, you're a fool. The coldness in her words hit Basara like an arrow, his dignity shattered. He quickly tried to defend himself. Of course not. She's just talking nonsense, he said, pointing at the albino girl who shrank into herself and sobbed. Sniff, sniff, but Basarazin. So what you told me was a lie. Tears were running down Maria's face. Her tone was fragile and her expression devastated. You said I was beautiful just the way I was, that it didn't matter that I didn't have a body like Mio's. You even asked me to show you my body so you could appreciate it. Maria wiped her tears amidst more sobs. Mio glared at Basara with pure disgust, a look that said, You're. Basara's heart sank at the gesture. Hey. It's not what you think. She's making it all up. His words only increased Maria's crying and Mio's contempt. A grimace formed on Basara's face. This was supposed to be his home, so why did he feel like a parasitic invader? Basara watched Maria wipe her tears, and discreetly and without being seen by Mio, she winked at him and let out a tee. Basara's eyebrow twitched, but knowing that anything he says can and will be used against him, he opted to change the subject. Where's Potato, Jean-san? He said something came up unexpectedly, and he needed to go away for a few weeks. What? Basara shouted. The brunette approached Maria and grabbed her shoulders. What do you mean he left? Where did he say he was going? Why didn't he tell us? Basara bombarded Maria with questions while he kept shaking her. Ye two don't know. I'll leave you a note on the table. Basara released Maria and ran to the table, found a small note which he quickly read. Basara. This time I found a big clue. I have to go. There are suitcases of money under my bed. Look after Mio and Maria while I'm gone. Sincerely, your great father. P.S. Happy birthday. P.S. 2 check the box _ Basara clicked his tongue. Once again, his father had tricked him. He felt stupid for falling for such a simple trick, especially considering what his father was like. Still, knowing that he left because he'd found a clue about her filled him with immense joy. Even though 5 years had passed since that moment, he still missed her. Her departure remained one of Basara's greatest traumas. Then he read the postscript and noticed that next to the note was a small, dark red box. He opened it, and to his surprise there was a gold chain necklace and a red crystal emblem that he immediately recognized. What's there? Maria asked as she peeked out from beside Basara. Mio also peeked out, although more discreetly. Basara instinctively closed the box, looked at the girls' puzzled expressions, and gave them a nervous smile. Haha, nothing important. Just a necklace. After saying that, the boy hurried up the stairs under the curious gaze of both girls. Once in his room, Basara closed the door and sat on his bed. Basara opened the box with a trembling hand, and found the same necklace with a noble emblem on it. He carefully took the necklace, as if it would break at the slightest touch. A grimace formed on his lips. Dad! Come quickly, Mom is here! Mom is here! Before he knew it, tears were falling from his eyes onto the necklace. Basara wiped his tears away and inspected the necklace. Basara smiled. It looked better on you, he murmured nostalgically, remembering the distant days when the red-haired woman would squeeze him in tight hugs and how he would complain about being too big for cuddles. If I had known I would lose you, I would have prolonged those hugs, Basara sighed. What's done is done, and he couldn't undo it. He continued to appreciate the necklace until he felt something in it, a type of spatial distortion that he knew perfectly well. Mama, when moving to a new city, there are some very important things to keep in mind. The first is to make sure you have a home with all your furniture, the second is to have a source of income, and the third is to know your surroundings. Taking advantage of the fact that they needed things from the store, Basara, Tuju and Mio Naruz rode the former's bicycle to buy things and get to know the neighborhood. Do I really have to come? Mio muttered dissatisfied as she wrapped her arms around Basara's waist. The brunette could feel his large bulges leaning against her back. Don't be like that, you already lived here, you already know the place, Basara sighed inwardly. He had managed to explain to her that the morning scene was a joke by Maria, and although she seemed to believe him, the feeling of awkwardness between the two remained. What am I supposed to do? He wasn't used to dealing with women or people in general. He hadn't been able to socialize much for 5 years. Hey Basara, what was that dream this morning? That? Well, that surprised Basara, but not too much. He supposed it was normal to ask after being knocked to the ground by one of his nightmares. Unfortunately, Basara couldn't tell the exact details to a normal person like Mio. If he did, it would cause a lot of trouble, so he decided to summarize it without giving too many details. 9 years ago, when I was living in the countryside, there was an accident. It was a traumatic event. I still dream about it sometimes. Mio just said, I understand, and didn't ask any more questions. She seemed to want to respect his privacy, something Basara appreciated. They arrived at the store. Basara suggested Mio wait outside, and she agreed. Upon leaving, Basara found a group of 3 men surrounding Mio. What's up, sweetie? Why are you so alone? What do you care? Hey, calm down. What's making you so angry? Did your boyfriend leave you? Get out, or I'll kill you 100 times. The annoyance and indifference that Mio spewed out did not amuse one of the three, a blonde one. You think you're very brave, huh? The blonde man took Mio's face in his hand, forcing her to look at him. She glared at him and was about to say something hurtful, but he covered her mouth with one of his fingers. Now listen to me, you're gonna URG. The rant was interrupted when Basara grabbed the guy by his shirt from behind and threw him to the ground. Hey! What the hell is wrong with you? The guy shouted while the others became aggressive. Basara just looked at him with indifference. I saw you were bothering my sister, so I threw you to the ground, Basara said with such disinterest that the guy stood up and grabbed Basara by the shirt roughly. You have 10 seconds to take your hands off me or I'll slam your face into the ground. Basara's calm but threatening tone provoked laughter from the trio of boys. 10, 9, 8. Oops. Oops. A kid is going to hit me. How scary. 7, 6, 5. The guy and his friends continued to make fun of each other, and the blonde noticed something unusual. 4, 3, 2. What do we have here? The blonde man poked at Basara's neck and held the emblem on his necklace. He let out a loud whistle, recognizing its quality. A beautiful necklace with a gold chain and a symbol made of what appeared to be rubies. Well, it looks like we have a rich kid among us. The other boys were surprised and exclaimed a loud "Oh!" A smile spread across the blonde's face. Look, kid, let's do this. You give me this pretty necklace, and me and my friends won't beat you to a pulp. 5. Basara connected with a blow to the blonde's face, knocking him to the ground. That wasn't a normal blow, it was one with enough force to break his nose, knock out a few of his teeth, and knock him unconscious. The blonde's friends rushed at him, but Basara dodged them without difficulty, and using a mix of judo and aikido techniques, he knocked the pair down and slammed them back against the ground. Crack! Mio could have sworn he heard a couple of bones break. The trio of boys groaned on the ground, letting out agonized wails as Basara watched them with an unreadable expression. While he wasn't someone who let himself be trampled on, Basara wasn't that violent, much less one who abused his strength to such a brutal degree. But when the blonde boy took his mother's necklace, Basara kicked the blonde's face while hiding his necklace in his shirt again. He turned his gaze to Mio with a neutral face. We must go. Basara and Mio continued on their way home. During the journey, Mio became increasingly quiet, which Basara interpreted as a bad sign. Being approached by those three reminded her of the guy who attacked her? Basara couldn't be sure. Thinking of something to cheer her up, Basara remembered a particular place. As he crossed, he went down a different street than the one that led to his house. Mio noticed and couldn't contain her surprise. Where are we going? You'll see. The place Basara took Mio to was a not very well-known park, specifically a spot where you could see the entire city. Wow! Mio exclaimed with delight, dazzled by the view bathed in the orange and red colors of the sunset covering the city. It's nice, but you just moved in. How did you know about this place? Right when we moved, Dad and I visited this park. I found this place by chance. It reminded me of something. In Basara's mind, the image of his mother, father, and a little Basara admiring the scenery on a mountain was clear. A nice view, huh? Yes. I never knew there was a place like this. Let's come next night with Maria. The night view is very spectacular. Basara, I suggest casually. Then, yes, next night. Mio's expression clouded. Basara continued watching until he found his house, and upon finding the house, he remembered the incident with his necklace in which those guys thought they could take away his family symbol. Family? Basara looked at Mio. He still had a lot of things to think about and process about her and her sister, but the only thing he was clear about was that now he had more members of his family. When Dad told me about you, I have to admit I was taken aback. Basara commented out of nowhere. How am I supposed to act? What should I do? Even now I don't have the answers, but all I know is that you're my family now. Mio let out a sound of surprise. Basara looked at her, making sure to make eye contact. If you have problems, if something happens, if something bothers you, let me know. I believe that the fundamental part of a family is happiness, and although I'm not sure if I'm doing it right, I'll try my best. Basara expressed what he thought. He felt it was a bit cheesy, but that's how he thought. How cheeky, Mio suddenly muttered. Basara looked at her and smiled. You know, you just sounded like an older brother. Is that so? I'm glad. The two shared a comfortable moment, watching the sunset turn into dusk, the lights of the streets and buildings illuminating the dark night. It was at that moment that Basara promised himself something: he would take care of his new family, no matter what it took. But it was also at that moment that sadness and regret filled Mio. For humans walk by day, and demons lurk by night. "We're here." Basara entered with Mio following him. Maria was sitting on the couch watching TV, and they entered with her characteristic jubilation. "Hi, how did it go? Did you get what you needed?" "Yes. We had a problem, but we solved it." Basara spoke as he entered with the grocery bags in his hands and walked to the kitchen. Maria tried to get up to help Basara, but Mio stopped her by grabbing her shoulder. Mio's expression was sad. "Onisima, did something happen to you?" Maria's tone was worried. Had someone hurt her? Basara seemed unlikely, but it was possible some guy had scared her somehow. Mio sighed, and said something that surprised the albino. Basara hummed between whistles as he arranged the groceries in the kitchen. "But my lady, if we do so, we risk attracting the attention of the city's owners," Maria whispered worriedly. Mio instead shook his head. "No, Maria, no. I don't want to do it. I refuse to keep hiding like a simple parasite behind others," Mio said in a very high-pitched tone, which caught Basara's attention. "Girls, is something wrong?" Both girls looked at Basara, shame and resignation adorning both sisters' faces. Maria sighed in resignation as she raised her hand. "No, I'm pointing it in Basara's direction." Her palm flashed, and Basara was attacked by a supernatural power that threatened to manipulate his thoughts. Basara stood still, motionless, his head bowed. In the sister's eyes, Maria's mind control spell had worked. "Good, all that's left is for you to dictate your orders and he'll follow them. I'll also make sure that all of this remains nothing more than a dream for him, my lady," Maria said in an obedient and respectful voice. Mio, in response, approached the motionless Basara with a serious expression. "Basara Tuji, you left home because you couldn't adapt to living with your new sisters. You'll go to your family in the countryside and live with your relatives until Jean comes to take you in. There's no such thing as magic, and everything that happened today is just a dream." With those words, the glow in Maria's hand disappeared. Basara immediately voluntarily left the house, forgetting everything that had happened, or so it was supposed to be. Basara hadn't moved an inch, he just stood there frozen. It was strange, so Maria used mind manipulation magic on him again. "Hey!" In the blink of an eye, Basara had disappeared from Maria's sight. She looked back at the possibility, and there he was, standing behind her in her blind spot. How did you?" Maria choked at the situation. She aimed at him again and fired a wind spell to incapacitate him. The wind blasted straight at Basara, and with a shrill roar the wind magic was erased. For a moment, Maria swore she saw a white line from her side, and instantly her wind magic was erased. Basara, standing before their eyes, held a huge silver sword in his hands. His right arm was covered up to the elbow with silver armor. The green gem embedded in his sword emanated an emerald glow. Basara raised his head and looked at Maria with silent and stoic rage. "Why are you surprised, demon?" Basara spat out the last part. Maria backed away in fear, her face wanting to ask, "How do you know?" "The moment you cast your spell, I was able to identify the source of it. Pure and unmistakable demonic power." Maria got nervous, and upon hearing Mio's alarmed "What?" she stepped between Basara and Mio's path. "This is bad, my lady. Of all the homes we were able to enter, it seems we did so in that of an Ayu," Maria spoke worriedly. Now it made sense why Basara had resisted her mind control. Mind control spells required the use of magical power greater than the target's magical resistance or psychic strength, and the Ayu, the hidden warriors of Japan, were experts at repelling mental attacks. However, what surprised her most was that there was no magical trace left of her spell. The spell was a weak one, and it was no surprise that it was repelled or cut off, but it wasn't just that. Once any kind of thaumaturgical process was deployed, it would leave traces of magical energy, but when Basara cut it, no trace remained. It was as if it had never existed in the first place. Basara for his part frowned at the mention of the Ayu. "I'm not an Ayu, I'm something worse, a demon. I'm an exorcist." Basara stepped forward, his sword emanating a furious sacred flame, "and at this moment I will purge them." At a speed beyond the perception of the human eye, Basara rushed towards them. Maria knew what was coming, and in an act of self-sacrifice she covered Mio with her small body. Basara's sword fell on top of them. Basara looked at the girls he was about to cut. They closed their eyes tightly. The edge of his sword was inches away from slicing through their bodies. The holy flames emanating from the blade threatened to burn their bodies and corrode their souls under its purifying energy. But Basara Tuju didn't do it. He was furious. He wanted to scream while he reproached them for having deceived him and his father, but he couldn't do it. It was at the moment Maria covered Mio that she realized she couldn't kill them. Dozens of demons and humans have died under his sword, but he could not kill them. And then the youngest of the girls stood between the danger and her paralyzed older sister. The girls, realizing they were out of danger, fell to their knees. Basara dematerialized his sword and gave them a cold stare. Get out. Both of them opened their eyes in surprise. Basara just turned his back on them in silence. Don't make me repeat myself. Go away. I just don't feel like dealing with you. When both of them regained strength in their feet, they left the house and left Basara alone in that living room. Being alone, Basara collapsed on the sofa while letting out a heavy sigh. His right hand kept shaking. I was careless, he murmured in disgust. These 2 years of abandoning the exorcist life and training were taking their toll on him. Maria's ability to cast her spell was conclusive proof. He even had to use that power. Basara was filled with intense rage, but it wasn't directed at Mio or Maria. His anger was directed at the one everyone called the strongest human, the so-called god of war, his father. Basara took his cell phone and dialed his father's number. Hello? What were you thinking? Basara asked. He tried to remain calm, but his emotions leaked from his attempt at stoicism. So you know, huh? You took longer than I expected. His father's shameless and brazen tone only further fueled Basara's anger. You knew they were demons, why didn't you tell me? Well, that's a bit complicated. They originally belonged to a demon clan. But I mean one of the dishonored and almost extinct clans repudiated by the noble clans. Mio's father knew that the noble demons would try to use their influence to make her life a mess or possess her. So at birth he hid her in the human world so she could have a normal life. Her father died, and the demons discovered she was alive, so they tried to capture her. The poor girl had lived ignorant of the supernatural until some demons killed her parents. Maria was a servant of Mio's clan and intercepted and rescued her. Then I found them. They thought it was a coincidence and played along. That Basara didn't expect something like that. He knew something superficial about demonic politics, so he knew that his father wasn't lying to him. Now I felt a little sorry for both girls, but still, that doesn't answer my question. That's the funny part. Why do you think I, of all people, would rescue orphans from a demon clan? Something in his father's tone made Basara uncomfortable. Doubt and uncertainty flourished in his mind. An oppressive feeling that terrified him and made it impossible for him to ask questions. That's because Mio's father was the leader of the Abaddon clan too, your mother's brother. 3. Kwa streets. 11 p.m. At a certain hour, the streets of Kwa become less crowded. Most people are just hanging around or working night shifts, so there aren't many people around. However, when children finally leave the streets, the age filter is removed. The streets are filled with women dressed in blatantly provocative ways, and lonely passenger cars visit them to avail themselves of their services. Prostitutes. One of them in particular was a mature blonde woman with noticeably large bobas, wearing blue mini shorts so small you could see the strings of a thin thong, and a shirt so short it barely covered her boba points. To complement all of this, she was properly made up and showed off sensual red lips. This woman was smoking, standing waiting for a customer, watching the cars go by. A car stopped right in front of her, as she waited for the traffic light to turn green. The woman approached, and like many other times, she approached the closed window and gently knocked on it. The window opened, and driving the car was a rather young man. Too young, she would say. The young man didn't look older than 18, maybe younger. He was wearing a red shirt, a black trench coat, and colored pants. The boy wasn't ugly. He was somewhat attractive for someone his age. He had messy brown hair and dominant eyes behind his sunglasses. Although he looked young, the woman got the idea that it was a genetic thing if he was driving a car at this time of night. Hey handsome, don't you want to have some fun? The woman leaned in, making sure to highlight her prominent cleavage and flash a flirtatious smile. The young man stared at her for a few seconds in total silence, then touched a button, and a click was heard on the passenger door. The young man slightly raised his glasses, revealing his pair of honey-colored eyes. Get up. His tone was firm, and the woman couldn't help but smile. Sure. The woman got into the car while making sure to sway her prominent hips for the young man's enjoyment. Already in the car, the young man drove a few meters until he parked in a dark alley between buildings. The woman placed her hand on the young man's leg, very close to his manhood. His eyes sparkled with naughty, and he whispered to her in a tive tone, "Tell me, handsome, what do you want us to do first?" The young man seemed to tremble at her touch, but he recovered, took off his glasses, letting the woman see those attractive honey-colored eyes. I think some foreplay wouldn't be bad." "Yeah, that's it." Her voice sounded nervous, but she acted anyway. She moved her right hand slightly nervously and hesitantly placed her palm on one of her bobas. "It's your first time." For this will be easy." Knowing that this young man was easy prey, the woman took the brunette's hands and slid them under her boba cloth. The brown-haired boy was excited to feel the soft flesh in his hands, so he played with the large mammary glands like a child with a new toy. Calm down, handsome. I'm not leaving here," she whispered in a tone as sweet as honey while winking at him. The brunette gulped, but put on a stupid smile. The woman put her fingers in her, and with a sensual shake she took it off, exposing her large bobas. The young man became so excited that a light drop of blood dripped from his nose, which the woman found amusing, and gave him a sensual smile. "Come on, baby, try them." The brunette quickly brought his face closer to one of those orbs and taken at it with desire. The woman sobbed as she stroked the young man's brown hair. For a rookie, he sure knows how to take in bobas. The woman bit her lip with desire. It seems that her client would be more fun than he appears. Sobs echoed through the car as the brunette taken Ed on the woman's boba points as if he were trying to extract milk. At one point, he guided his hand to the woman's manhood and began pleasuring her. So they continued, filling the alley with sobs and shaking the car until the moment of ending arrived. "That's it, honey. Keep going," the woman said between sobs, and after such a passionate act, she finally reached the CLI. "Hey, Issei. Don't hog her for yourself." "Yes. Remember that the three of us pooled the money to pay for a prostitute." "Huh." The woman watched in confusion as a pair of young men the same age as the brunette complained in the back seat. Neither of them were as handsome as the brunette, and their most striking features were that one wore glasses and the other had a shaved head. Both of them were complaining and pointing at the brown-haired boy while they were overflowing with as much or more excitement than him. The brown-haired boy, Issei Haidu, stopped paying attention to the woman's body and looked at the pair angrily. "Shut up. I remind you that I brought Dad's car, so I'll have my full shift first." Issei shouted at the pair with authority that the pair ignored. That's not what we agreed on." The one with glasses, Motohama, shouted at him furiously. "Yes. And in that case I should go first. The idea of hiring a prostitute was mine," the shave-headed Matsuda declared. "What? You're crazy. I was the one who contributed more than half. It's only fair that I go first." "Of course not. I'll go first, so shut up." The woman watched as what was supposed to be simple mating in the car turned into a fierce fight between teenagers to see who would sleep first. Not only was it ridiculous, but it also inadvertently caused one of the things the woman hated the most to happen. "I was 1 second away from coming." The interruption of the couple stopped the act dead in its tracks, and the woman couldn't reach ending, and that was something she hated. More than the arrests with the police or disgusting clients, the woman hated being left wanting, even more so because of a stupid fight. Screw the therapists who called her a nymphomaniac. She was a Chikonada woman, and refused to bait when those idiots hired her. The woman growled, looked at the trio of S who were still arguing and yelled at them. "Hey, idiots!" The trio stopped their argument and looked at her in surprise. Well, if these virgin teenagers wanted a prostitute, they'd get this furious prostitute. I don't give a f about their problems. Are they supposed to f me, right? The three nodded scared. "Okay, let's go then." The woman took off her mini shorts and opened her legs, then forced Issei's head between them and forced him to put his tongue in her womanhood. "You there. This is your punishment for not letting me run." The woman sobbed as she felt the brunette's tongue enter her interior. The boy undoubtedly had talent, but she wasn't finished. The woman grabbed Matsuda and Motohama by the ears and forced them to take in one of her bobas each. "You ag idiots are going to take in my bobas. None of you can stop until I come, understand?" The response was not verbal, but they responded by stimulating the woman and making her sob like crazy. Yes. Yes. Almost there. She let out a loud sob. She had finally ending it. You guys. Get out of the car immediately. You're all under arrest. A police officer in front of the passenger door ordered them while showing them his badge. The three young men were immediately scared to the core. It's the law. Start it, Issei, start it! Matsuda and Motohama quickly threw the prostitute out the door, knocking the policeman down in the process. Issei's foot didn't shake and the car started in reverse, spinning and crashing the trunk with the front of the police car. My patrol! The policeman pushed the prostitute aside and ran towards his patrol car while Issei started at full power, leaving a cloud of smog. While the policeman was wailing and the trio of teenagers escaped, the prostitute stayed there, on the floor, lying down, naked and most importantly extremely. Ha 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 ha. Sitting on the edge of a building, a beautiful girl with black hair and violet eyes couldn't stop laughing. Ha! Oh, and just when I thought they couldn't get any stupider. Ha ha! I had been watching that trio for a few days, and their stupidity was hopelessly funny, so much so that I couldn't stop laughing even if I wanted to. Ha ha ha! Looks like you're having fun, Rainier. The named one stopped laughing in her tracks. I recognized that distorted voice that resembled that of a robot. He looked behind him and found a man dressed in a noble suit, with spiky black hair combed back and wearing a faceless white mask with gold engravings. She recognized him instantly. MMR, Lars! What are you doing here? She wondered as she stood up and stood firmly on the building. The man named Lars crossed his arms while putting on a mocking tone. I was making sure you were doing your job properly. If I remember correctly, you were constantly complaining about having to watch a human. Rainier blushed. It had been a huge scare when her superior found her complaining with her colleagues, and now he found her laughing out loud. While I don't deny that at first I found it outrageous to have to watch over a human for a possible sacred gear, I admit that watching over this human is very fun. His antics are entertaining. A smile appeared on Rainier's lips as she remembered how that human, Issei Hayato, always got into trouble with his friends because of his perversion. Lars looked in the direction of the car in which the perverted trio was escaping. A light ha escaped from his mouth. That's good, but there's been a change of plans. It has been determined that that human's sacred gear is too dangerous, and it has been ordered to be eliminated. The cold tone with which he said it erased Rainier's smile. Kill Issei? The idea for some reason disgusts him. Mr. Lars, if I may say so, consider that we should not kill you. A tense silence fills the air, and Rainier wonders if her master has become angry. If Lars hadn't been wearing his mask, Rainier would have seen that he only raised a confused eyebrow. Why, in your opinion, should we disobey an order from your superiors? Lars's tone was calm, without a hint of anger. Rainier immediately swallowed all her fear and replaced it with mere stoicism. During my time monitoring the human, I realized he's very manipulable. If his sacred gear is as powerful as they say, we might be able to convince him to join us as a valuable asset. Lars pondered Rainier's words for a few seconds. It's true that we could recruit that human and add his power to Grigori. Rainier's eyes seemed to light up. But the orders are clear. Don't try to push your preferences above the cadre's business. I know you've been interacting directly with the target, Rainier. The girl immediately paled. After observing her target's antics for a few days, she thought it would be fun to talk to him while disguised as a human. She had many rather amusing moments going to parks, hanging out, and teasing him. Lars reached out and grabbed Rainier by the chin, pushing her just inches away from falling. Rainier grew nervous, but those nerves turned to fear when Lars applied more pressure to his grip, almost enough to break her jaw. You have until tomorrow to kill him. And with that said, a pair of black wings manifested on his back. Those wings weren't normal, they weren't the organic raven wings of a fallen angel like Rainier, they were metallic black wings. Phosphorescent purple lines were drawn all over the structure of these, connecting the wings and marking the feathers like magical circuits. The lines and circuits on his wings glowed, and in an instant Lars teleported away. Rainier staggered a little but fell into the ceiling, sweating terrified and on her knees. Curse! Rainier cursed. She wouldn't admit it, but she had grown rather fond of the human Issei Hayato. She had considered taking him in as her little pet, but it seemed he was too dangerous to let live. The black-haired girl clicked her tongue, stood up, and looked at the city with a frown. It's a shame, but I guess that's what I got for being attached to humans. She sighed in disappointment, but an idea popped into her head and made her smile and lick her lips. See you tomorrow, huh? I guess until then I'll have fun with him. In the dark streets of Kwa, Mio and Maria Neruz walked aimlessly. Neither of them said anything. They hadn't spoken much after being kicked out of the house. Whether by coincidence or Mio's unconscious feeling, they both arrived at the park Basara had shown Mio. The redhead gazed back at the entire city with its bright lights. It was almost like seeing thousands of stars beneath you. Despite the beautiful view, Mio leaned on the railing with melancholy. Mary was at her side, and seeing her mistress's condition she could not help but comfort her. Don't be sad, my lady. We were just unlucky that those two were exorcists. With someone else, we'll surely make it. Maria's words made Mio feel more miserable. It had only been a month since her life took an unprecedented turn. She had been watching a movie with her parents until a pair of demons broke into her house and killed her parents. Dad! Mio screamed as the blonde man stabbed her father with his spear. Her father looked at her and her mother and managed to murmur, Koren Blurg. That's what he said while spitting blood. The man with the spear threw his body against a wall with terrifying ease and indifference. Mio cried and tried to run to her father's body, but her mother grabbed her and they ran out of the house, but it was in vain. A blonde woman stood in their way. The woman made a movement with her hand and a gust of wind knocked her and her mother off their feet. The woman points a finger at him and shoots a cluster of flames at Mio. Mio could only close her eyes and cover herself with her hands, but the attack didn't reach her. Her mother had stood up and was using her back as a shield. Her body was engulfed in flames, and her screams were like a stab to Mio's heart. Mine cried and cried. She screamed helplessly on the ground, kneeling before the charred corpse of her own mother. The man with the spear approached and said something to the woman. Mio didn't listen. She would scream until her throat tore out. The man roughly grabbed her by the hair and shouted at her. She didn't stop screaming. Even when the woman created another fireball and pointed it at her, she continued to wail. Crack! A white blur appeared above the woman, and with it, a sickening crunch was heard. The woman's neck had been snapped, killing her instantly. The man tried to stab the person responsible for killing his partner, but the person disappeared in a purple flash. Confused, the man looked in all directions, found something falling from the sky, and pointed his spear at it, but it disappeared again. Right in front of the man, a small girl with long silver hair wearing some kind of lingerie appeared. The girl didn't let him react, and with a kick sent him flying into the hunt. She then created a fire spear and threw it at the man, creating an explosion that engulfed the house in flames. The girl stares at the man for a few seconds, making sure he's dead, then turns her gaze to Mio. The kneeling redhead can only feel fear, and gets up to run away. Mio hadn't even taken 3 steps when the little girl appeared in front of her. Mio was startled and fell backward, but the little girl gently caught her and lowered her to the ground. Mio stuttered and asked who the girl was. The girl just smiled, then bowed. My name is Maria, and I have come to protect and serve under the will of the last daughter of the Abaddon clan. From that day on, Mary remained by his side, always faithful. She told him everything about her lineage and why they had to hide. As Mio remembered, Maria became alert. My lady, I don't want you to be alarmed, but someone trapped us in a barrier. Mio flinched at Maria's words. She realized a barrier covered the entire park. The barrier was weak, designed only to keep humans out, but it meant a fight. In the distance, 2 figures emerged from the park's trees, 2 humanoid beings with white masks. One wore a black hood and carried a long scythe, while the other was a 4-meter-tall giant carrying a pair of axes, one in each hand. Both of them emitted a palpable demonic aura. Their target was obvious. Mio didn't back down from her enemies, she just stared at them while her heart pounded. But her heart races not from fear, but from anger. Those demons were demons who were after her just like the ones who killed her parents, but she was. In the short time she spent with Maria, she learned the basics of magic, how to use spells, and how to shape her demonic power with her imagination. They drove the humans away. Good. That makes things easier for me. Mio emitted a crimson aura, a manifestation of her demonic power. The rage boiling in her heart drove her to fight, to take revenge for her parents. I'll kill them 100 times. In Rias Gremry's mansion, she sat nervously on her sofa as she stared at a leaf with a Gremry emblem carved in red on a small table. It was a leaf that transmitted holographic calls via magic. Rias Moreau frowned as the seal took on a reddish glow and emitted the loud sound of a Mozart song. A few years had passed since his arrival in the human world, and he rarely communicated with his parents, mainly because they had nothing inspiring to say to him. That's not how you manage a territory, Rias. You're taking too long to recruit servants, darling. You should focus on your commitment, Rias. Rias clenched her hands into fists, but calmed herself with a deep sigh. Relax, Rias. It's just your parents you haven't seen in 3 years. It's not that big a deal. She said this to herself as an auto-suggestion, put on the most solemn expression she could, and snapped her fingers. The seal stopped playing the song and revealed the red hologram of a woman, Venelana Gremery, her mother. Hello, Mom. Venelana gave her daughter a loving smile. Rias, look how you've grown. You're a real young lady now, Venelana said with the most sincere affection. Despite being demons, Venelana loved her children wholeheartedly, and it was a hard blow when her daughter decided to move to the human world to expand her abilities and business. Rias's stomach churned. She hadn't expected to feel this way so soon, but seeing her mother after so long was a source of excitement. A genuine smile appeared on Rias's face. Thanks. Where's Dad? Your father is attending to some clan matters, you know. You're just a month away from turning 18, and he wants it to be a grand event. The Forma will be there along with all the clan leaders, Venelana said with a smile. Rias let out a light laugh. I can imagine. He could imagine his father filling from one place to another, decorating with red curtains, carpets and tables, the remaining 13 legions of the clan raising red square shields and forming the words Happy Birthday Rias Gremery to the sky, and as icing on the cake, preparing a herd of camels to receive her and take her to his podium. Ah, camels. Rias adored those big, humped balls of fur. She even had a baby camel living with her. But don't tell your father to tell you, it's a secret. Venelana winked at Rias, who gave her a sly smile. Tell him what? Exact. They both smiled knowingly. There was no doubt they were mother and daughter. But leaving that aside, why did you call me? Rias asked. Despite the joy she felt talking to her mother, she wasn't naive. Spoiled, perhaps, but not naive. Since her arrival in the human world, her parents had only contacted her for important things, and she didn't believe that her mother had called her just to tell her about her birthday. Venelana put on a tight smile, which didn't give Rias any confidence. You've become very perceptive, darling. Mom, what's wrong? Sai, listen, honey. Your father and I have been reading your business reports, and we've noticed that things haven't been going very well for you. Venelana's tone was more subdued, and a hint of guilt could be seen in her eyes. We discussed it for a while and decided that we won't delay the inevitable. We'll move up your engagement. That! Rias let out a furious scream. The anger was visible in her. Because? Rias yelled at Venelana. Venelana looked at her angrily and betrayed. Venelana had remained impassive at her daughter's shock, and with the best calm voice she could, she spoke to her. Rias, I know how you feel, but try to understand us. Ever since you were given administrative duties, you haven't been able to live up to expectations, and your talents for leading the legions are well non-existent. Those words were a hard blow to Rias, but her mother wasn't done yet. We've always wanted the best for you. That's why we engaged you in the first place. And the best thing for me is to be married to that naughty full pig who only sees me as a trophy. Rias screamed as she slammed her fist against the table and accidentally broke it, sending the hologram sheet tumbling to the floor. Venelana sighed at this. Rias, I know you don't like Riser, and there's no reason for that. I know what you're talking about, but understand that once you get married everything will get better. He'll take care of all the annoying clan chores while you can live as you please. You'll have the backing of one of the richest clans to do as you please. You might even fulfill your dream of becoming the Rattan Games champion. The excited way Venelana explained everything, the way she proposed things, her way of speaking made it hard to refuse such an offer. An ideal proposition made with an unparalleled charisma that for a moment made Rias herself hesitate, to fall into the dealings of a demon. The only thing you have to do to have it all is have a child. Fizz! A pulse of demonic power was released from Rias's body, a burning ember of reddish-black flames that disintegrated everything behind Rias. Rias? Daughter? The named one didn't respond, her gaze covered by a dark aura and her eyes by her red hair. Rias expanded her hand and in her palm materialized a sphere of condensed black destruction. Laugh. Wait! Rias threw the sphere at the blade that generated the hologram. The device turned black and vanished into ashes. No, not even ashes remained. It was a clean disintegration. Rias watched in silence as her mother's figure faded away. A few long seconds passed until wet drops fell from Rias's shadowed expression, her tears. Rias fell to her knees and cried silently. She looked at her trembling hands and brought them to her face and wiped her tears. I was naive to think they would have changed, for as long as she could remember, from the moment her engagement was announced until now, her parents' wishes were the same, to have a child. For as long as Rias could remember, the clan members, especially her father, pressured her to bear a child. It wasn't because the clan was patriarchal in structure that she inherited the clan's distinctive bloodline future simulation. The children of the Gremry clan were able to glimpse simulations of futures in which they would perform certain actions with prior information of the scenario to be simulated, but Rias was not. She inherited her mother's bloodline, everyone always reminded her. Her parents and even the servants denied her authority. She wasn't a true Gremry. A child? Is it only important to you that I can give you a child? Is the only thing left for me to do now the end of a fool's wife? Rias continued to cry, a shameful act, as it was something very human, as her mother would say. Her thoughts were interrupted when she heard her cell phone ring. I'm serious about taking care of the children. Well, who is it? Rias replied, speaking in the most natural tone possible. Guess who I am? A sing-song voice sounded on the other end of her phone. Rias recognized that voice. Akino? Boo! You figured it out pretty fast. The voice belonged to her friend who was also her servant Akino Himejima. It's already midnight and we don't have any contracts today. Why did you call me? Well, I was strolling around the city, wandering aimlessly until I found a containment barrier in a park that releases a suggestion spell to ward off humans. It's made of demonic power and has the strength to withstand the attacks of a middle-class devil. But I don't recognize the magic signature, he said as on Akino's side he tried and failed to put his hand into the magic wall. An unidentified demonic barrier? Sounds like a stray demon, Rias said as she wiped her tears, frowning. Yes, but the barrier is too good for a normal stray. Maybe they're a group or a rather strong one. Do you want me to go in? No, wait right there. Tell me the location and I'll go with you, she declared as she stood up and looked at herself in a nearby mirror, noticing how her makeup ran because of her tears. Okay, but don't be too long. I want to make those strays scream a little, Akino declared with a sensual and suggestive tone of voice. Rias sighed at her friend's sadistic tendencies. Her sadistic tendencies had been a constant for as long as she could remember. He didn't know if her conversion into a devil brought her that defect, or if it only stimulated that side that already existed. But in the same way he appreciated her for what she meant to Rias, her family. Rias fixed her makeup and used her teleportation circle. The demons rushed at the girls. Mio fired a blast of demonic power at the scythe demon, but it deflected it with its weapon. It then jumped back several meters while being attacked with more and more of Mio's blasts. The Twilks-wielding giant charged savagely at Mio, but found Maria's small figure in his path. Maria closed her eyes, her body enveloped in demonic power, and her clothes were replaced with a strange lingerie. Her ears lengthened, and a tail with a harsh-shaped tip grew behind her. The demon stands in front of Maria and raises one of his axes and drops it in a blow. Dry metallic sound. Maria opened her eyes and looked at him holding the demon's axe with both hands. Yes, the 1.40 centimeter tall girl could easily block the axe blow of a 4-meter tall demon with her bare hands. Maria smiled, jumped slightly, and landed a punch in the demon's stomach. The blow was so strong it knocked him back, while his ribs crunched. If you want my lady, you'll have to go through me, Maria said while giving a flirtatious wink to the demon. Then she moved and punched the demon in the jaw and knocked him to the floor. And once on the floor she climbed onto his body and grabbed his head and ripped it off. Maria Lanza and catches the head with a playful expression. Try harder. Mio was amazed by Maria's strength and indifference in killing. He wasn't afraid, but rather felt awe of the demon's natural power. She couldn't continue thinking about it because the scythe demon attacked her from her side. Mio raises a wall of light, effectively blocking his attack. The demon tried to retreat but ran into a wall of light. He moved and realized he was inside a mini square-shaped containment barrier. Mio raised his right hand. In his palm a fiery sphere appeared. Go to hell. Along with that statement, Mio shoots the reddish ball of light that she created and passes through her barrier, hitting the demon directly. The raw power incinerated the demon until only ashes remained. Hump! Mio lost interest in the dead demon and noticed the barrier disintegrate. He then looked at Maria, who came up to stand right next to him. The little girl playfully excited him. So does this help you get even? His way of asking made Mio feel strange, but she couldn't help but nod with a calmer face. Yes, he said, looking up at the night sky, we should find a place to sleep. Careful! Maria pushed Mio, receiving a shot in her stomach. Maria sobbed in pain as she noticed that this wasn't a normal shot. A normal human gun would barely leave a wound if she was caught unaware, but the uncontrollable burning in her wound, which burned like poison, confirmed it. Grr! Replied to the benditas. Maria cursed her luck. It seems Basara wasn't the only exorcist in town. Mio standed at a barrier between them and the shooting site. Where are you? She muttered angrily, searching for the person responsible, and found him. He was just a few dozen meters away, holding a silver rifle while wearing metal gloves and a white mask. Meanwhile, Maria applied basic healing magic to heal his wound while removing traces of light energy. Fortunately, the bullet didn't lodge in his body. Running footsteps were heard, and from behind them both and from below the edge of the railing a hooded demon with a long sword came out and attacked the pointing at Mio. Dry metallic sound. Maria intercepted the sword, but the demon got rid of it and connected with a kick to Mio's face in such a way that she threw her off the sidewalk, making her fall. Mio began to fall, and the demon threw himself at her, pulling out a revolver and shooting her in the chest. It wasn't as deadly, and the bullet wasn't as blessed as the one that hit Maria, but he still had more bullets left. Mio couldn't do anything, she just stood there. Pain and fear prevented her from using a flight spell, and she hadn't even learned how to use her wings. I'm going to die, she thought. Frustration invaded her, just as it had when her parents died. The helplessness of not being able to do anything infuriated her. She didn't want to die, she couldn't die. She hadn't avenged her parents yet, hadn't made the person responsible pay yet. She looked at the demon falling beside her. His white mask had holes for his eyes, yet she saw no light in them. He looked like a mere puppet. I want to live, she thought desperately as tears streamed from her eyes. She wanted to live. She wanted it with all her might. The barrel of the revolver turned, and was ready to fire again. I want to live! Bang! And in those eternal seconds, Mio heard something. A scream that ended in the mouthpiece O-H-H. Pedaling his bike at top speed, Basara got close enough to jump onto the bike and leap several meters. Basara took Mio in his arms and pushed them to avoid the bullet. The brunette maneuvered in the air and landed on his feet with Mio in his arms. He didn't have time to say anything as the demon landed in front of them. Basara threw Mio aside and blocked the next shot, summoning his gauntlet, the bullet colliding harmlessly with his metallic palm. Basara's emerald eyes blazed, and his sword materialized in his hand. With incredible speed, he sliced the demon in two before it could react. The gem on his sword flashed, the figure of the demon writhed within it. Narrowly, Basara sighed, looking at Mio in relief. Sorry I'm late. She offered Mio a hand to help her up, and Mio looked at her, confused, shocked, and scared but also relieved. My lady! Bang! Maria threw herself at Mio and Basara, dodging a bullet. She unfurled a pair of small bat wings and landed gracefully and softly. She looked at Basara in confusion, which wasn't surprising. Just 20 minutes ago, he'd kicked them out of his house, nearly killing them, and now he just saved Mio. Basara noticed the bullet wound in Maria's abdomen and put on a serious expression. Stay here. Basara didn't give them time to respond when he made a huge leap and ended up on the edge next to the railing, immediately noticing the masked man with a rifle. You make it disappear, he affirmed. The masked man responded by shooting him in the head. Dry metallic sound. Basara blocked the bullet by moving the blade of his sword to cover his face, his expression not wavering an inch. You hurt my family. He said it loud enough for Mio and Maria to hear. His sword ignited with burning holy power. You will die. FZZZZZZ. But both were interrupted when a bright lightning bolt struck the masked man, damaging him to the point of burning his body and clothes and blackening his mask. The lightning continued long enough to tear through his muscles and force him to fall face first onto the ground. Era, look what we have here. an illegal exorcist, a voice spoke with a peculiar tone. Flying above the masked man on a pair of black bat wings and wearing a school uniform, a beautiful young woman with curvy hair and violet eyes looked mockingly at the masked man. What kind of punishment should we give him, Rias? The woman asked the girl who was flying behind her. The girl Rias Gremory looked inquisitively at the masked man. The masked man tried to get up and pointed in the direction of Rias, who in turn pointed her hand at him and created a black sphere of crimson glow. The masked man shot, and Rias threw her sphere at him. The bullet collided with Rias's power and disintegrated upon contact. The sphere collided with the masked man and spread throughout his body, eroding him in seconds. Rias didn't bother mentioning the poor devil and instead set her gaze on Basara. Under my authority as the owner of Qua City, I, Rias of the House of Gremory, demand to know who are you and what are you doing in my territory. When Rias appeared at the location Aquino gave her, she noticed that the barrier she said was quite simple. The barrier is capable of generating a dome that isolates the interior from the outside world. Not to the point of generating an artificial dimension, but still managing to prevent anything from entering or leaving. In addition, the barrier emanates a suggestive spell that implants in the minds of beings, in this case, ordinary humans, the idea of "I don't like this place, I'll stay away from this place." Although it may seem impressive to a mere human, it was actually extremely simple. It's strange that a demon would deploy a barrier in plain sight instead of its base, Rias said as she touched the magical wall that generated the crimson dome. The red energy repelled her hand. Maybe I'm in the middle of a fight, Aquino, a black-haired girl about Rias's age with a body no less stunning, suggested, which made sense. These kinds of barriers were the kind that demons normally deploy in the human world when they start fights. Maybe. We still have to go in. Rias raised her hand and channeled a mass of her power of destruction, ready to destroy the barrier. Rias stopped, her demonic hearing something approaching. Turning around, Rias saw a young brunette approaching. That was Basara Tuja pedaling a bicycle. A human? It seems he was not affected by the persuasion spell. Basara continued pedaling, not noticing them because he wasn't approaching them, but rather a point a dozen meters away. Aquino quickly noticed where she was going. She's going to the barrier. Basara raised a hand as he approached the barrier dome. He waved his hand diagonally, and the barrier disappeared. No longer a wall, Basara rode past it on his bike as if nothing had happened. That human just broke down the barrier, Aquino commented in surprise. Maybe he's involved in all this. Don't let him get away. Rias and Aquino spread their wings and took flight. They watched as the young brunette saved a girl, killed a masked man, and stood guard to attack a masked man with a rifle. Aquino paralyzed the masked man, and Rias disintegrated him with one attack. At this moment, Basara was interrogated by Rias, who demanded answers. Under normal circumstances, Basara, as an exorcist, would have attacked and killed both demon girls. Rias Gremory, Basara muttered. I repeat, tell me who you are. Rias spoke with an authoritative tone as she accumulated a light layer of power of destruction in her hands. Wait. We're not squatters, Basara said as he dispelled his sword and glove. I didn't expect to meet one of the city's proprietors so soon, but I was prepared. He grabbed his amulet and used what looked like spatial magic to take out some papers with photos of Basara, Mio, and Maria with the Gremory emblem marked on them. Rias descended from the sky with Aquino and examined the documents, verifying that this was the magician who had requested accommodation in her territory. Look at this. Looks like we've found a tenant, Aquino comments while Rias looks at Basara in surprise. I see that, but I need to know what happened here. Basara scratched the back of his neck, gave a nervous glance at Mio and Maria, who had stayed put so as not to alert the city owner while winking at them. His signal was clear. Just go with the flow. My sisters were strolling around here until they were attacked. They managed to send me a magical signal, and I came as quickly as I could to help them, Basara told them, lying but using his training to feign honesty to appear convincing. Rias didn't delve too deeply into finding lies. I understand. It's nice to meet you anyway, Tuja, Rias said politely. Basara inwardly sighed with relief at having avoided further trouble, so he responded with a sincere smile and polite words. The pleasure's mine, Gremorison. If you'll excuse us, tonight has been quite intense, and I think my sisters would prefer to return home. Basara pointed at Mio and Maria, who just nodded while looking at each other in confusion. Rias agreed and watched the group leave. They watched them with intrigue. Anything that catches your eye about the boy? Aquino asked out of nowhere. He seems quite polite, and has the power to break down a middle-class barrier. And that sword, even from a distance, I sensed its holy aura. To be honest, Rias was more anxious than she let on. From what her mother had said, she knew she only had a month left until her wedding, and her only escape would be to risk it all in a raiding game. Rias is aware of this, but she's also aware that she'll have everything against her. Whether it be experience, number of servants, or bloodline compatibility, she would be overwhelmed, so she only had to risk her reputation by exploiting the most infamous strategy among her society's sacred weapons. She is aware that a weapon capable of using holy power will earn her the disdain of the noble demons, but it will also give her an incomparable advantage. The pride of demons prevents them from using their universal weakness to win their duels, considering it a sign of weakness by not being able to exercise pure supremacy. The young demons are arrogant people who have never faced any difficulties. The old ones are decrepit old men trapped in nostalgia for the era in which Lucifer lived. But Rias is different. Despite being a young devil, she has her feet firmly planted on the ground. She knows her place, her own weakness, and her constant mortality. How? It was several years ago, but the memory remained etched in Rias's mind. Piercing, intrusive eyes. Blue irises glowing with an electric, mystical hue. Her instinct paralyzes her. Every cell in her body screams that she's facing a predator, the largest to ever walk the earth. Rias shudders. She touches her cheek and realizes there's no cut mark, but the phantom pain lingers. She sighs, but her eyes light up with determination. The determination of someone who has pride but has discarded her arrogance. She thinks of young Basara with his sacred sword, a design she's only seen in sacred gears. I want it in my nobility, she said decisively. Let's go home. That's what Basara told them. Naturally, Mio refused. Why would they follow someone who kicked them out of their home and nearly killed them? However, Maria told him they would follow him. Despite having kicked them out, he had returned to save them from the demons and the city's owners. Whatever he was up to, he wouldn't hurt them. Upon arriving, Mio went to take a shower to wash off her stress while Basara and Maria chatted. Basara poured Maria a cup of tea and was surprised to notice how carefree she drank it. I was hoping you'd be wary of the tea. Aren't you afraid you've poisoned it? Maria gave a light laugh as she shook her head. If you really wanted to kill us, you wouldn't have gone to the trouble of kicking us out, saving us, and bringing us here to poison us. You don't strike me as someone that petty. Basara ascending, finding that reasoning logical. That being said, I need to know, why did you save us? You said it, you're an exorcist. Why would an expert in executing demons save a pair of demons? It's a bit complicated. I'd rather discuss it with Mio present. She raised an eyebrow, curious about Basara's words. Basara himself wasn't sure how he was going to say it, but he decided to calm Maria's doubts. What I can tell you is that no matter what happens, from now on I won't let anyone hurt them. I understand Mio's situation, and you have my word that I will protect her with my life. Basara said this with complete seriousness. Maria listened in disbelief. Had this boy really said what he said? Do you know what you're saying? You'll have literal hell as your enemy. But Basara showed no doubt. Then I will protect them with the last drop of my blood. Maria was silent for a few seconds before bursting into laughter. Ha ha! You're crazy, she said, wiping away a tear. But I like you. I don't know why you do this, but I feel like I can trust you. Maria calmed her laughter and looked at Basara with a smile. Right now, my wife needs all the help she can get, and even though I only saw you for a few seconds, I can tell you're really strong. Is that so? Honestly, I'm a little rusty, Basara said as he opened and closed his right hand. He had successfully summoned his magic sword Brynhildr, but his arm had gone numb from lack of practice. If Basara had to say it, he was a quarter as strong as he was 2 years ago. I don't believe it. For someone who claims to be rusty, you managed to erase my wind spell. Basara's body tensed as memories flooded his mind. That was a coincidence. Coincidence? Don't joke. You can't just erase a spell along with its magical traces by coincidence. He told you the truth. Let's go after Mio. I'm sure she wants to know what's going on too. Basara said as he headed to the bathroom in his house. At first glance, it seems like he's trying to divert the topic, and that's partly true, but Basara wasn't lying to Maria. It was a real coincidence that he had erased the spell. Since the incident 5 years ago, he hadn't been able to use that power. The water ran over Mio's body, and as she bathed she couldn't help but think about everything that had happened. She was almost dead. She was just moments away from being shot by the masked demon and dying. She felt pathetic. With what ferocity did he proclaim that he would take revenge on his parents if he died so easily? I'm weak, she thought bitterly. What good was it to be the daughter of a noble demon if all she could do was cry and hope someone would save her? No matter how much praise Maria showered her with, she was little more than a burden. What did he do when those demons killed his parents? Cry and be lucky that Maria arrived. What did she do when Basara discovered her secret and attacked them? She took cover behind Maria and received mercy. What did she do when she was about to die after falling while being shot? Freeze and be saved by Basara. Tears of frustration trickled down her eyes and camouflaged themselves with water. Mio couldn't stand it anymore. She leaned her head against the wall and punched the wall with her blows. His blows were called by the sound of water, but they were still palpable. The force behind each of them was great. It was the strength of a demon. Crack! One of his blows managed to crack the wall with a punch mark whose cracks expanded like a spiderweb until they were the size of a head. Mio withdrew his hand and noticed that beyond his slightly bleeding knuckles, there was a layer of demonic power surrounding it. Demonic powers are shaped by the demon's imaginations and emotions, usually consciously but also unconsciously. The anger she felt and the desire to vent it led her to unleash her power, giving her enough strength to break the bones of a normal human. Mio stepped back in alarm, then covered her eyes with her hands as she cried. Even now I'm still causing trouble. Mio screamed in frustration as she grabbed her red hair and pulled it hard. Her unstable emotions were reflected in an aura that burned like a red flame. Talk. Mio! Is something wrong? I felt you raise your aura. On the other side of the door, Basara spoke to her. Mio noticed the loss of control of her powers and forced them to calm down. It's nothing. Mio's words died on her lips, and she only responded with evasive responses. Basara, on the other end, heard her and quickly realized what she was doing. Mio was keeping her sorrows to herself, stifling her pain so as not to upset others. Basara recognized it, and introspection struck him. Mio was acting evasive out of feeling responsible for everything, overwhelmed by the tragedy, and Basara recognized it. How could I? The same thing happened through the same thing. Do you want to go out? We need to talk, Basara said. Talk? Not now, I'd like to be alone. Maybe that way I'll stop causing you so much trouble, Mio said with a depressed tone. Mio, I know what happened to your parents. It wasn't your fault. He tried to reason, but it was no use. Of course. If my parents hadn't adopted me, they'd be alive right now. If I hadn't cheated on you, you wouldn't have to put yourself in danger. And if I weren't so stupid, I wouldn't have broken your toilet. Mio screamed from the other side through tears. The frustration that ate at her made her kneel as she let the water flow. Just leave me, I'm nothing but a hindrance. Basara heard every word from the other side of the door, and felt frustrated. He clenched his fists in frustration as memories of the incident in the village flooded back. He remembered playing with his friends and moments later holding the sword Brynhildr. He remembered his mother. In front of him, the scene of a terrified Basara was played out, crying silently in his room with the door closed. Honey, can I come in? Said the loving voice of his mother from the other side. No! I'm a monster! Infant Basara cried out between sobs. He covered himself with his blanket, hoping to disappear so he couldn't hurt anyone. His mother sighed sadly. Honey, you're not a monster. It's not true. I killed them. In Basara's mind, a video was playing back how he had been terrified when Sito-senpai was in front of him holding Brynhildr stained with blood pointing at Kurumi. How he used banishing shift out of fear and how everything around him disintegrated. The image of Yuki holding his sister's headless body filled him with self-loathing. Don't come in. If you do, I'll hurt you. Despite her screams, her pleas, her mother opened the door. No! Basara hid between his sheets while screaming. Don't come any closer. He continued shouting, but knew it was ineffective when he heard the sound of footsteps on the floor approaching until they were beside him, separated only by that green blanket. Nuh! Drip! A drop of blood fell from Basara's hand to the ground. He had put too much force into his grip, but he couldn't care less. Mio, I'm going in, Basara spoke firmly as he opened the door. In the shower, Mio let out a loud "eh" and closed the curtains. What do you think you're doing, pervert? Get out, Mio screamed in shame, and although Basara felt like metaphorical knives were stabbing into his chest and filling him with shame, he didn't hesitate. Mio, you don't have to bear what you feel alone, Basara said with a calm voice, which unsettled Mio and made her forget for a second that only the curtains covered her body from Basara's sight. Why are you so kind to me? I tricked you and hid the fact that I'm a demon. I also hid from them that I'm an exorcist, so I think we're even. I tried to joke, which only discourages Mio. I tried to manipulate your mind. I tried to kill them. We tricked your father. Actually, he knew about the deception from the beginning. Basara frowned as he said that. As well-intentioned as his father was, he was a reel for hiding something like that from both of them. Mio was dismayed by the revelation. Jin-san knew. The revelation shocked her. All this time, filled with anguish for having lied to a good man like Jin, feeling regret and anguish, and it turns out Jin had seen their faces. It sounded hypocritical, but she felt deeply offended by such deception. He is, right? Out of pure reflex, Mio approached with an audible That's him. He's a deceitful who traps you in his planes when you least expect it. Basara said it with a more disdainful tone than Mio expected, but Basara wasn't just saying it to make Mio feel better. He had been tricked into this unnecessarily complicated plan of his father's. It wasn't the first or the last time his father behaved like a mean-spirited who liked to deceive others, or a shameless man who didn't take things seriously. He's still a good man, Basara said as he remembered how his father, so mean and shameless, did not hesitate to abandon the Ayu and cut off all ties with the Tuju clan when they tried to seal Basara. That still doesn't explain why you're helping us. Mio, although calmer, pronounced those words with distrust. The reason? That's quite simple. It's because they're my family. Basara's words held affection, a genuine desire to protect not born of devotion like Maria. It was a genuine affection born from the heart of the one who had saved her. Family? What are you talking about? The whole thing about our parents' marriage is a lie, Mio continued with her stubborn attitude. Families are not defined by blood or marriage, they are governed by the ties between their members, Basara declared firmly. You're an exorcist, aren't you disgusted by the idea of demons becoming your family? Mio continued, his voice now containing an uncertain tone. I'm just an exorcist by profession. I'm not a devout person, and even if my entire family were made up of demons, I'd still love them, Basara said, putting special emphasis on the F word. Mio became flustered, her mind a mess filled with voices telling her to accept his kindness, while on the other end were voices yelling at her not to be selfish. She remembered the fate of her parents, and couldn't help but notice. The demons that chase me will attack you. I will face them. But if you do that, the church will consider you a traitor. I will face them too. Basara's casual response pierced Mio's heart. She continued arguing in a weaker voice. I'll be nothing but a burden, a thorn in your heel that will only bring trouble, she said between sobs. It's not worth sacrificing so much for someone who can't give you anything. Basara didn't respond this time. He thought he had started to consider the dangers and was thinking of retracting, but nothing could be further from the truth. You're an idiot, he said frankly. What did you say? I said you're an idiot. Is it that hard to understand? Basara said it calmly and naturally, which infuriated Mio. She was trying to keep him away from her problems, and that was looking down on her. How dare you! I'm trying to keep you from getting involved in demon trouble and facing literal hell, and you call me an idiot? Mio yelled at him angrily, annoyed by such mockery, but then Basara spoke, and all anger was appeased. That's exactly why. I don't care. What kind of man needs a reason to protect his family? Basara sighed and sat down on the toilet. He took out the necklace hidden under his shirt and looked at it fondly. I decided to protect them. Not because I was going to win anything. I decided because the bonds that form a family are more than enough reward. Because no matter what happens or who I face, what I'm going to lose or what injuries I receive, I will protect my family, no matter the cost. Mio's body froze, her snow-white face flushed, and her heart began to race. Her mind was in conflict. She longed to accept those words. She wanted to say yes, to hug him through tears as she thanked him and asked him to protect her and accept her as his new sister. But the doubt persisted, a glimmer of reason that criticized her selfishness in wanting a boy barely older than her to drag all her problems. I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want anyone to get hurt because of me. I don't mind. Basara's tone was now firmer, and his words left no room for discussion. I decided this, and I'm going to do it because I want to. Even if I face hell, if I end up hurt, or if you yourself don't want me to, I'll take care of you, period. This isn't about whether you want me to help you or not, I'm going to do it. They both fell silent. Basara thought he could have found a better way to communicate his intentions, but didn't regret his words. Mio couldn't find anything to say in the end, the decision had been made. Mio's heart began to pound urgently, and a quick glance at Basara's determined face told her everything she needed. Are you really willing to sacrifice so much to take care of me? I will fight heaven and hell if necessary. Mio smiled from her side of the curtain. I will force you to keep your word. Basara didn't answer. He held his necklace and let the memories flow. He remembered. His mother gently removed the blanket, but Basara curled up in a ball, begging for her to leave. His mother stroked his hair and spoke. No. It went deeper. She sang to him from her heart with words that came from the depths of her soul. He listens, but he doesn't understand the words. She doesn't remember them, but those words calm him. She takes him by the chin and forces him to look at her. She looks into his eyes as she sings with indescribable love. Basara can't resist. He bursts into tears and hugs her. His mother wraps her arms around him as she continues singing. She finishes singing, then kisses his forehead, and Basara can see her, the beautiful woman with long red hair and soft pink eyes. Her mother smiles at her as she wipes away her tears. No matter what they say, no matter how they look at you, no matter how you feel, you are not a monster. You are my child and my treasure. I love you, and even though I'm gone, I will still love you. And he spoke. So be it. They didn't say anything else. Basara left so Mio could change, and as he closed the door, he noticed Maria leaning against the wall with a smile. I heard everything, and I appreciate you choosing to take care of my wife. You're welcome. I'm just doing what any brother would do. I still appreciate it, but you still haven't told us why you changed your mind. When Mio comes out, I'll tell you. And said and done? Once Mio came out dressed in mini shorts and a yellow, everyone headed to the living room, where Basara would tell them everything. First of all, do you recognize this? Basara took out his necklace and showed it to both of them. Mio found its shape familiar. Maria examined it and squealed when she saw the magic in it. The heart of the abyss. This necklace was passed down through the generations of the heirs of the Abaddon clan until it was lost with the death of Sapphire Abaddon during the Civil War. How did you get it? The necklace was never lost, and Sapphire never died either. I received this necklace as a birthday present because she was my mother. The heart of the abyss. That necklace was passed down through the generations of the heirs of the Abaddon clan until it was lost along with the death of Sapphire Abaddon during the Civil War. How did you get it? The necklace was never lost, and Sapphire never died either. I received this necklace as a birthday present because she was my mother. Both Maria and Mia looked at him in surprise, and to dispel their doubts, Basara snapped his fingers and imbued the room with his magic. Both girls could feel the demonic power flowing through the room, but it was Maria who spoke in a disbelieving tone. And gravity magic. Demons descended from demonic clans have a special power called Bloodline 1. Bloodline is a unique power that varies from clan to clan, and each clan is named after one of the great demons that fought in the Great War. The Baal have the power of destruction, the Agars have time manipulation, and so on. But the bloodline of the Abaddon clan is gravity magic, which, as its name suggests, allows them to manipulate gravity. Basara had doubled the gravity on Mio and Maria's bodies. Nothing their superhuman bodies couldn't handle, but it proved his point. Wait. If your mother is part of the Abaddon clan, then we're related. Yes. My mother was your father's older sister, so we are cousins. Sapphire Abaddon lives, Maria whispered. But how? The last thing anyone heard about her was that she died facing the superhuman Gene 2. The revelation hit Maria like a boxer's right. Basara's father was named Gene Tuju. On the other hand, humans don't have long lives. Rarely do those who live past 100, so they couldn't blame her for mistaking him. Jean barely seemed to be entering middle age, which didn't make sense given the fact that his fight where he killed Sapphire was in 1800 AD. Well, that was a pretty elaborate smokescreen. Then Basara explained what she knew. In the 18th century, during the war between the Japanese clans and the radical faction of demons, her parents clashed on multiple occasions, developing a rivalry. Somehow, that rivalry ended in mutual attraction. Their final fight was interrupted by an unidentified third party. They both attacked the third separately and began a three-way fight. The clash of their powers shook reality and opened a dimensional hole that swallowed them and led them to the dimensional rift, where the flow of time occurs differently than in the normal world. Her parents didn't tell her what happened to the person who had interrupted their fight, but they did tell her that Jean and Sapphire had developed a loving bond. By the time I was able to escape the dimensional gap, it was already the 21st century, and Sapphire was pregnant. Sapphire learned that her faction had lost and her clan had fallen into disgrace. She decided not to return, as the news of her survival could start a new civil war, so she stayed with Jean to raise Basara. We lived peacefully in the Tuja clan village for 10 years until Basara bit his tongue. It was my fault we were exiled. Somehow the demons found out that Mom was alive and the Agars came to kill her. Both girls remained silent, looking sadly at the brunette. Mio knew perfectly well how painful it is to lose your parents. She compared their situations and found them similar. Maria, for her part, seemed confused. Kill her? But Sapphire was the most powerful female demon in history. How did the Agars clan manage to kill her without devastating the human world? Maria's words were not without foundation. Sapphire was one of the 4 super demons, irregular demons born with unparalleled power. Even Leonhard Agars II, clan leader and most powerful member of the house in question, could not compare to her. Basara's expression turned gloomy. They caught me and used me as a hostage. They took advantage of her distraction and attacked her with a holy sword. Holy powers are the antithesis of demonic powers, and are a poison that wounds the very soul of demons. Still, that didn't kill her. She crushed them with her magic, until that came. A chill ran through Basara. His memories of that day were hazy, but he could vaguely recall the shape of that thing. It was humanoid, but definitely not human. It had armor that wasn't armor at all, it was its body itself. Its armor was black and silver-gray, its gauntlets were claws with which it held a long, enormous sword, almost as long as its body. The aura covering its body was red, but its sword was wrapped in a green aura. Basara remembered nothing more than that. He remembered even It's face as if it were covered in static, but he remembered the feeling of being in its presence. That thing killed her. I immediately fainted, and when I woke up I found out that when Papa had arrived I found myself next to Mama's and the Agars' bodies. Basara frowned. Papa looked for It but couldn't find it. Then he found out that the Agars were involved and attacked his territory. Wait, I attacked the Agars clan? Yeah, you didn't know? It was the big news for years. Even now it remains so because 5 years is nothing to demons. I didn't know. I spent my whole life training to become the best vassal for my lady. I lived in the Abaddon clan territories, and the people there are very unsociable. Maria's words were an understatement. After Sapphire's death, they had isolated themselves to such an extent that, by the time they escorted her out of the clan's lands, she had counted 12 barriers layered with the ability to repel ultimate-class demons together, concealing their lands. After Mom died, Dad and I traveled to Italy. Dad became a mercenary, and I became an exorcist. 2 years ago, something happened, and we quit. When we moved here, it was the first time I'd set foot in Japan in 5 years. Basara's eyes are alarming as he recalls. Those 3 years he spent as an exorcist were short, but happy. He was trained by great figures and even befriended 2 girls who, like him, wielded holy swords. So that's why you ran in such a hurry, Mio stated. What was all that about not caring about blood ties then? Basara blinked, but then realized that his previous words could now be seen as something solely to calm Mio down. I didn't lie to you about what I said. Even before I was buried, I had grown fond of them. Dad telling me that only strengthened my resolve. Mio looked at him suspiciously but ended up accepting his answer. Perfect. All that's left to complete the ritual is for Mio to kneel down and kiss the tattoo on Basara's hand. Mio looked a little embarrassed, but knelt down and did as instructed. Both tattoos glowed, then the glow faded, but the tattoos remained. The ritual was complete. After some deliberation, he decided to give Mio the bishop piece. Because of his position as a member of the clan and his potential, Basara had suggested giving him the queen piece, but Maria stopped him by telling him that it was the most important piece. She said that for someone with as much potential as him, it would serve well to reincarnate into a Longinus user or a powerful high-class dragon in the future. Basara listened to her, but he thought Maria was delirious. For starters, dragons are, alongside gods, the pinnacle of power. The stronger a dragon is, the more proud it is, and considering that a low-class dragon was just as strong as a high-class demon, a dragon of the level Maria was talking about would kill him just for suggesting such an idea. Things aren't getting any better for Longinus users. Sacred gear are magical artifacts created by the God of the Bible so humanity can defend itself. These are attached to a human soul at birth, and the process is repeated when the user dies. Even the weakest of sacred gear are invaluable to humans, as they, along with legendary weapons, are the only ways they can seriously compete against the supernatural on their own merit. The Longinus are a subcategory created for being extremely powerful sacred gears, to the point where in their history their users have killed gods. There are 13 Longinus, but most of the current users have already been discovered and recruited by some faction. There are only 3 Longinus whose whereabouts are currently unknown for Sephiroth Graal, Regulus Nemia, and Boosted Gear. Ignoring the fact that there are only 3 people to search for, finding a specific person among 8 billion people without any leads is impossible, especially considering that they won't be moving too far from the city for the time being. The only possibility that he could recruit a Longinus user without risking facing a faction is if he lived in Qua, was close in age to them to be able to interact with him, had no supernatural knowledge, and showed his powers in front of them. The possibilities were infinitely less than 0, so Basara was skeptical and had no illusions. Sooner rather than later Basara was metaphorically slapped by the goddess of fortune, X, the next morning. I can't believe they ruined my chance to sleep with that blonde beauty. On top of everything, my dad got mad about the car crash and told me he'd be spending the next summer working to pay for the damages. Hayate Issei yells at his friends. It's your fault for being so greedy. We made a deal and you broke your oath, you Judas. Yeah. But the worst part is, that Hadi almost had the 3 of us. But that cop interrupted us. The surrounding students looked on in distaste at the perverted trio's blatant display. These idiots were known for spying on the Kendo Club girls and swimming in their dresses, as well as openly declaring their perverted desires. They were desperate virgins, and the only reason they weren't expelled was that the girls in the clubs, stressed out by school or problems at home, could beat them up to their heart's content since they wouldn't say anything. A fair exchange, the trio argued. They continued arguing until it was time to go to their classrooms. They immediately calmed down their aggression and began talking like the best friends they were. Have you heard the rumors? They say a new baby has just been passed down. I hope it's not another cute boy like that Prince Charming Yuto. Matsuda sighed, put his arms behind his head and looked up at the sky. When we entered Core Academy, I thought it would be the beginning of our golden age. Both friends shared their sadness. Core's Academy was originally for women only. It only became co-ed 2 years ago, and naturally, a group of healthy men like them worked hard to get in. They thought it would be like those animes where the girls had 0 male contact, and that they would be enchanted by his masculinity, and each form a harem. It was every man's dream. She immediately realized that, surprise. The girls have lives outside of school and already meet boys. Their perverted attitudes earned them the disdain of the student population, and they were marginalized from student society, where no girls would even speak to them, not even to manipulate them into doing their homework. Well, Aika was the exception, but she doesn't count. They arrived at his classroom, where Issei had the privileged position of standing behind the famed warrior princess of Qua, Naru's Mio. She was known for her strong character, having once slapped Matsuda's 5 teeth out for spying on her while swimming. Issei wonders what would happen if she had hit them with a buken like the Kendo girls and shudders at the possibilities. Naru's arrived with the teacher and a boy Issei had never seen before. Naru sat down in his seat, and the teacher called everyone's attention to introduce the boy. Hello everyone. My name is Tuju Basara. I hope we get along. The polite way he said it, coupled with his natural attractiveness, the visible scars on his hands, his rolled-up sleeves and open shirt sent a strong signal of danger to the boys present. A heartthrob, they thought, annoyed. Issei was especially bitter when he remembered how that same tactic seemed to work for him with that blonde cutie. Then he noticed how that same surname was the same as Kwa's pet. Very well. Please, Tuju-kun, I'll take a seat next to Naruze-san. To the surprise of many, Tuju didn't ask who Naruze was, he just sat next to her. The girl said something to him as if they already knew each other, and he responded the same. The boy's quiet dismay was palpable, as there was an unofficial agreement that, within the school grounds, no one was to make a move on one of Kwa's stars. The select group of one man and several women recognized as the most popular. The fact that during class the girls were murmuring, curious and attracted to the new boy, only set off their alarm bells even more. The day passed relatively normally, as Issei learned that a new girl had arrived at the first-year student center, a youthful albino beauty. That was the description of Tuju Kaneko. He quickly discovered that this girl's personality was the opposite of the cold and sharp-tongued Kaneko. Issei thanked God for such a gift. The new girl turns out to be Naru's sister, and she had already formed a group with her and the new guy. Issei grunted, but didn't get sad. He knew he didn't stand a chance anyway. Skun. As he crossed the bridge, a black-haired girl in a uniform from another academy greeted him. It was Yuma-chan. Issei put on a silly smile. The girl had approached him several days ago, and had become his friend, even hanging out with Matsuda and Motohama. He had been very amused, especially when he discovered that she didn't mind his caution, she actually found it amusing. To Issei, she was like an angel descended from heaven. Hello Yuma-chan. How have you been? Me? Fine, but I see you've been a bit grumpy. Was it that obvious? Issei scratched the back of his neck in embarrassment. Yes, you see, I've been having a lot of bad luck these days. I believe it. Last night you seemed so excited to go up with your friends. You even wore sunglasses tonight. Did you see us? Issei got nervous. Yuma's relaxed and unconcerned manner shook him out of his confidence. She liked that. You looked so confident. She put her hand on her chest. So manly, she whispered in his ear, and just when you were about to achieve it, she bit his earlobe. Issei blushed and let out an embarrassed sob. You and they threw her out of the car and ran away. LOL. Issei fell to the ground on his knees. Manly tears streamed down as he remembered such an embarrassing scene. The worst part was that Yuma, the only girl who had ever approached him, had seen it. Issei wanted to die. Yuma couldn't stop laughing when he saw how Issei had the expression of someone who wanted to commit seppuku 5. Yuma stopped laughing. He looked at Issei's depressed state and licked his lips in anticipation. You know, Skun, if what you want is to lose your virginity, you don't need to hire us. Issei raised his head and looked at the confused girl. Yuma grabbed his cheeks and leaned down until she was face to face with him. If you want so much, you can ask me. Issei began to stutter, his eyes darting around as if searching for something. Yuma forced him to look at her while accentuating her prominent cleavage. Tell me. Tell you? Just tell me what you want and I'll do it. Tell me, Skun, what do you want me to do? Issei stuttered and spoke even more nervously. To want. Yes, tell me. Her voice expressed tie-in and her eyes desire. I want you to. Things. I want Yuma-chan to be my girlfriend. Important. It turns out I got Issei and Basara's ages mixed up. I thought Issei was 16 and Basara 15 at the beginning of their stories, but they're 17 and 16 respectively. I would like to correct this, but you have no idea how lazy I am to search between chapters, so I am correcting myself from now on. The village incident happened at the same time Basara was 10 years old, and his time as an exorcist was 3 years. He went 3 years without training and his skills atrophied. Pffff. Ha 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 ha. Issei fell to his knees. He had spoken without thinking. He was so excited at the idea of Yuma-chan letting him have his virginity removed that he wanted to jump with excitement, but he couldn't be direct. Issei didn't consider Yuma-chan just a girl to sleep with, she was his friend, his best friend. It had only been 2 weeks since he met her in a park while walking, but for Issei, it was more than enough. Not only did she tolerate his perversion, but she was able to genuinely express herself in a way she couldn't even with Matsuda and Motohama. Issei had fallen in love with Yuma Amano. Yuma's laughter dies down. I look at Issei, defeated, comically beaten down by his laughter. That made her shudder with joy. She didn't know why, but there was something so attractive about that stupid, overly hormonal human. Issei didn't know it, but the whole time Yuma watched him, he realized the brunette had a magnetic charisma that was tempered by the disgust of those watching his perversion. You want me to be your girlfriend, huh? Yuma smiled. It wasn't an innocent or pure smile, nor was it tainted by mockery or condescension. It was a genuine smile driven by emotions a human couldn't possibly experience. It was the smile of a fallen angel. She leans down to bring her forehead level with Issei's and forces him to look into her eyes. Without Issei expecting it, Yuma claims his lips in a warm but passionate kiss. Issei was surprised, but clumsily responded on his own initiative. Their tongues danced in perfect sync, and when they broke apart to breathe, their mouths were connected by a thread of saliva. Yuma gave him a sensual blush and made him stand, moving without resisting her touch. See you at Park at 6. Don't miss it. And with those words and a flirtatious wink, Yuma walks away humming a sweet melody. Issei stood still, silent, paralyzed like a statue while everything that had happened resonated in his mind. I have a girlfriend, Issei said to himself, then continued repeating it like a mantra. He pinched himself, and when he felt the pain run through him, his entire body began to tremble. A huge smile filled with the purest happiness appeared on the brunette's face. I have a girlfriend, Issei shouted and cheered, running through the streets, shouting with pride. He shouted it to everyone, to construction workers, to a traffic cop, to furries. He shouted, I have a girlfriend. He even went back to school, where his friends were spying on some of the afternoon clubs. Matsuda and Motohama were scolding a girl with glasses. Aika. Ho, what's up, Hayadukan? You look livelier than usual, Aika said in a mocking voice, and Issei caught on because her eyes went to his manhood. Issei covered his manhood knowing that this girl, who was called the female version of the perverted trio, had the mysterious ability to know the exact size of a man's member. She mocked him as usual, but Issei just bragged about getting a girlfriend. Matsuda and Motohama were almost crying with envy. Aika, oddly enough, wasn't skeptical, but instead congratulated him. What surprises me is that someone has penetrated that dense skull of yours. That's what she told him. Issei didn't understand, but his friends agreed with the girl and ultimately congratulated him. They wanted to celebrate the news, but Issei told them he had a date today, which fueled their envy even more as the brunette said goodbye. Issei never noticed Aika's smile, or how her hands caressed Matsuda and Motohama's backs, nor how they both shuddered at the touch. Issei finally arrived home while humming, I have a girlfriend, I have a girlfriend, I have a girlfriend. Dad, Mom. Listen, I have NOV. Issei froze in place. When he opened the door to the room, Issei didn't expect anything, but he would have preferred to see a demon king eager to claim his soul than what he saw. In front of him was his father, lying on his back, half naked, with a ball gag in his mouth and strange underwear with a lock on his member. His beast mother was wearing a tight leather corset and holding a riding crop while she stepped on his father's manhood. No one said or did anything. They just stayed silent until Issei stepped back and slammed the door as he started counting to 10 to recover from the hallucination caused by heat stroke or some gas leak. Having recovered and suppressed in the deepest corners of his mind what would definitely be a lifelong trauma, Issei opened the door and found his parents dressed normally watching TV and drinking hot coffee. Issei, you're back. How did it go today? His father asked with the most cheeky smile he could muster. Issei didn't dare contradict his game, so he smiled with enormous joy. I did amazing. Remember that girl I told you about? Oh yes, Yuma-chan. You showed us a picture with her, so we believe she's real, her mother said with an elegant laugh. So what do you think? She's my girlfriend now. His mother spit out her drink and his father staggered and fell flat on his face, accidentally triggering a gag that everyone decided to ignore. My baby, you have a girlfriend. His mother quickly wrapped him in a suffocating hug as she congratulated him. Wait, did she really agree to be your girlfriend? His father stood up and asked him, to which the minor nodded even in the suffocating hug. My little one has a girlfriend, thank God. His father immediately knelt down and began to pray, and immediately his mother did the same. The Hayada family, despite living in Japan, We're strangely a Christian family thanks to the influence of some old friends of their mother's. That family even had a son with whom Issei often played before they had to move for work. Please don't do that. It's embarrassing. Don't say that. Issei, you've always scared off all your potential girlfriends thanks to your strange tastes. Issei stared at his father in complete silence with a blank expression. The man faked a cough and corrected himself, but mostly because of your lack of subtlety. A cute girl showing up, tolerating your strange honesty about your tastes, and wanting to be your girlfriend. Tell me what this is if not a miracle from God. Issei wanted to object, but he was speechless. He realized that Yuma's arrival in his life was nothing short of a miracle. She was like an angel fallen from heaven to brighten his life. Issei knelt down and began to pray alongside his parents. Hours had passed. Issei had dressed for the occasion. He had left with his parents' blessing, who gave him advice such as not asking her boba cloth size, always showing confidence, and wearing clean underwear, just in case, his mother told him. Even though they had agreed to meet at 6, Issei was so nervous that he arrived an hour early. During this time, a cute girl in cosplay gave him a pamphlet with a circle full of red drawings. The girl told him that with her blood and the light of the moon, his wishes would be granted. Down, Issei thought. He tried to put it in his pocket, but he bumped into someone and the paper fell out of his hands and was lost in the sky as he was lifted into the air. Issei noticed that the guy he had bumped into was Basara Tuju, the new kid. Beside him were Mio and Maria Neruz. The red-haired girl looked blushing and looked at Tuju with need. It was a look Hayate had only seen in his porn videos. Tuju apologized but continued on his way while dragging the redhead by the hand, and she let out a sob. Issei swallowed hard and loosened his tie, noticing that despite being in the freezing cold, he felt the heat in the air. He regained his composure and repeated inhalations and exhalations to dissipate all traces of excitement. Yuma finally arrived. I'm sorry I kept you waiting. Don't worry, I just arrived. The two had a pleasant date. They tried ice cream and went to the mall where Yuma had forgotten to pay for an item of clothing, or so he told her while giving her a flirtatious wink, and they had to run to avoid being caught. They went to the zoo and watched the birds. They're beautiful, don't you think? Yuma told him while he saw a flock of crows. Hey, I don't know, what do you think of pigeons? Ha! Those prudish pigeons are boring and have no sense of humor. Issei was surprised by the comment and asked what he meant. Just an inside joke. Let's keep watching. And so they continued all afternoon until nightfall. They both walked through the dark streets lit by neon signs on a street Issei had never seen before. Yuma-chan, where are we going? Isn't it obvious? Let's crown this great date with something unforgettable. They both stopped, and Issei blushed as he read the sign on the building across the street. Motel, it read in red neon. To Issei's surprise, he saw the Tuju boy leaving the motel with Mio and Maria Neruz in tow. Both of them hugging each other's arms and pressing him against their chests. And Neruz. The new guy just slept with Neruz. The anger and envy he felt became visible on his face, but were erased when Yuma pinched his cheek. You know, it's rude to look at girls right when your girlfriend is right next to you, she told him in a fake hurt tone that Issei took very literally. Sorry, Yuma-chan. It's just my bad habits. To me, you are the most beautiful girl in the world. Issei shouted his honest opinion at the top of his lungs. That shout caught the attention of passers-by, but it made Yuma burst out laughing. Thufufu. You're so gentlemanly. Yuma dragged Issei and asked for a room. Once inside, she sat him on the bed while giving him an erotic dance and taking off her. Yuma, don't be nervous, I see. This is what you wanted, wasn't it? Yuma swayed her hips to a hypnotic rhythm and then turned around as she took off her skirt, giving Issei a perfect view of her round bum. The brunette became more nervous and took off his tie, his eyes never leaving the brunette's body. Still facing away, Yuma unclasped her boba cloth but didn't let it fall. She stopped him by covering her bobas but unclasping it, giving Issei a perfect view of her back. Issei gasped, and a stupid smile formed on his face, red from the heat and embarrassment. Yuma glanced at him and giggled. Yuma approached Issei, still holding her bra, and sat down next to him. The poor boy was a nervous wreck, unsure whether to squeeze those big bobas or not. The girl thought it was funny. She whispered to him, close your eyes, and he obeyed. The brunette closed his eyes and felt Yuma's soft hands run over his body, removing his vest, shirt, and a cross pendant. She laughed, took the pendant, and threw it against the wall. Then he felt something being placed on his head. Open them. Issei did so and looked at Yuma, smiling at him tively while showing and highlighting her bare bulbas. Thufufu. Shut your mouth or flies will come in. Issei was too shocked to respond, but he realized that what was on his head was Yuma's bra. He tried to grab it, but Yuma grabbed his hand. No, no, honey. This isn't the time to play with my bra. She then approached him and pressed her bulbas against his bare chest. Issei felt the softness, the warmth that those orbs of flesh gave him, and he couldn't help but let out a surprised ha. Yuma put a finger to his lips and silenced him. Relax, honey, just enjoy. She kissed him, invaded his mouth with obvious experience, and dominated the tongue play that followed. They both gasped and panted in sync, their bodies wrapped around each other, both lost in each other's gaze. Violet. What beautiful eyes. Issei got lost in her gaze like a kid in a candy store, hypnotized by the beauty of the color and the stimulation of her body. Yuma-chan. The girl frowned. Raynar. That? I said call me Raynar. Don't ask, don't think. Just say it, and in the next few hours you'll have all the pleasure you want, experiencing sensations you never aspired to know. She whispered to him with her lips just inches from his. Tell me. A lump forms in Issei's throat. Something in his mind told him to resist, to not say that name. Something in his mind urged him not to sin, but like Adam and Eve before him, Raynar, the forbidden fruit proved. Yuma Raynar smiled at him. She kissed him again, kissing him even as she started to go down. She kissed his neck, kissed his chest, kissed his abdomen. She continued kissing until she was right in front of Issei's pants. Raynar unbuckled his belt and pulled down his pants. And now the only thing standing between her and her prize was a pair of red underwear that was lifted like a circus tent by Issei's stand-in member. Say it again. Issei sobbed as Raynar grabbed his cloth-covered member. He looked into her violet eyes and found desire. Issei looked at her with his brown eyes clouded with pleasure. Raynar. When Basara first entered Qua Academy, he didn't really expect much. Bitter teachers and unruly students were the worst things he feared. So imagine his surprise when he ran into a demon while walking to his classroom. The demon in question was as short as Maria and had hair of the same color, but her appearance was the complete opposite of Maria's. While Maria was cheerful and hyperactive, this girl was serious and a few words. That girl stared at her in surprise, her body paralyzed at the sight, no, at the feeling. Basara stopped, expanded his senses to their limits and felt it. 12 demons inside the school and a barrier of great power in one of the classrooms. Under normal circumstances, Basara's first reaction would be to go to the principal and hypnotize him into canceling classes today and deploying a barrier to exorcise the demons. But Basara knew who owned this city. Excuse me, do you happen to know Rias Gremory? The girl looked at him silently for a few seconds with her eyes half closed, cautiously observing what her instincts told her was a predator. Yes, why do you ask? You're welcome. I can tell you're a devil, and you noticed I'm a mage. I'm here under Miss Gremory's permission. I just wanted you to know so you wouldn't get alarmed. My name is Basara Tuju. The albino was surprised to hear it. Still, yes, does that sound familiar? No, it's just that that's my last name. Really? What's your name? The girl hesitated, but agreed anyway. Always connected. Kitten? The girl looked away in embarrassment. Kaneko meant kitten in Japanese, and it was the name her teacher, Rias Gremory, had given Kaneko, who despised her original name. The problem was that when the Gremory family adopted her, Rias was 12 years old and already on her way to becoming an otaku, so they gave her that adorable name. It didn't help that the albino had cat-like attitudes and even purred to get Rias's mother to give her cookies. I am adorable. The girl looked at him with angry eyes, but she looked adorable to anyone else. On impulse, Basara reached out and stroked her head, and although Kaneko flinched at the touch, she quickly relaxed and let herself be pampered. Kaneko felt strange. For some reason, she melted at the brunette's touch. It felt like an extremely relaxing massage. Basara, for his part, noticed the girl smiling with her eyes closed, as if she were having a good dream. Pararararar. Wait, did you just purr? Kaneko stopped, staring into Basara's eyes. No, his answer was believable as a child caught stealing cookies, but Basara wouldn't press any further. Regretfully, I arrived with a frown. I found you. How did you get lost? The hallways aren't that long. Mio glanced at Kaneko. Were you talking to Kanekikan? Something like that. We were talking about our stay at Kwa. She's like us. Basara spoke in code as he noticed students walking past them. Mio understood and looked at Kaneko with narrowed eyes. Anyway, classes are almost starting. Let's go. And so, Basara and Mio left, leaving the albino girl to her thoughts. Kaneko didn't take her eyes off Basara. Kaneko was once a Nekashu, a variant of the yokai species, the Nikomata. Even with her reincarnation as a demon, she still retained the traits characteristic of her species, such as her heightened senses and aura perception. That's why he froze when Basara Tuju's aura flooded his senses. What Issei? Classes went on normally, more or less. Basara noticed how he and the girls were watched from a distance by the demons, but they didn't do anything or call out to him. It was a bit annoying, but nothing he couldn't bear. On his way out, he met up with Maria and Mio for a chat. They went to a restaurant, and Maria brought up the subject of the pact. As far as my analysis on Miss Mio has concluded, her physical strength has doubled and her magical reserves have tripled, Maria pointed out as she bit into her burger. Despite her apparent indifference, this was big news. Mio had the strength of a lower middle class and the magical reserves of an upper middle class demon. Something strange considering that only a month ago he began to use his powers. Now that the ritual is complete, Mio officially has the power of a high-class demon, the level that noble demons reach after a certain age as they develop their powers from childhood. All of this without doing practically anything. Is that so remarkable? I don't feel much. Of course. Miss, you're at the upper class level. A upper class at full power can completely destroy a mountain with sheer raw power. Maria had an expression that said they should celebrate, and Basara agreed. While the upper class aren't the strongest, they are important forces. Right now, if Mio set her mind to it, and used all her strength, she would destroy Kwa City. And speaking of which, how was the raise for you, oh my lord? Basara rolled his eyes, but replied, 50%. You received less than me. Well, you received the bishop piece. It's normal for your boost to be higher, and I got stronger than you think. I was already at the level of a high class before the boost. That didn't surprise the girls. That was too obvious considering how easily he defeated the demons, which along with his bloodline made him someone powerful. Truth be told, Basara was more surprised than he let on. He knew he wasn't at the level he'd shown during his time as an exorcist, and that he could recover to that level on his own, but doubling his power instantly at the level he was at was downright shocking. The possibility of reaching the level of an ultimate class or even higher was so palpable that it sent shivers down his spine. Now he understood the preciousness of the pact, and why it was so coveted. Speaking of which, I noticed something curious about the young lady. While she still seems to be a demon, there's something off about her. Something strange? Yes. I've studied several magical races, and the way my lady absorbs mana from the environment and transforms it into demonic power reminds me of dragons. Dragons? Dragons are the most powerful type of magical beasts, and are, along with the gods, the most powerful race. Dragons are divided into two types: born dragons and true dragons. The former are the children and descendants of the true dragons. They are less powerful than the latter and do not have the powers that the latter do, but they are still forces to be feared. True dragons are beings born in the dimensional rift. They are concepts made flesh and are primordial entities on the level of gods such as Gia, Ra, Huitzilopochtli, or Tiamat, who is a dragon. First I find out I'm a demon, and now a dragon? Mio complained loudly. I performed some discreet magical analyses, and while I believe her race hasn't changed, she's more like a dragon than a demon. It seems this change was due to the evil pieces, Maria commented discreetly, but it made Mio look suspiciously at Basara. He raised his hands as if a gun was pointed at him. Dad told me that when he was in the dimensional gap, he and Mom killed a dragon and devoured its flesh and core. That empowered him and made him even stronger than during his time in the war. Maria understood. Humans like Sigurd, who came to kill the Dragon King Fafnir too, devoured his magical core and bathed in his blood, hardening his body to an impossible level, multiplying his magical reserves as his production and handling of magic, and above all stole his unique ability to negate magic. He wondered what kind of power Jean stole. The three continued talking, whether about magical or mundane matters. After a while, they went to the park, where Mio helped them familiarize themselves with the city for tactical purposes. Hours passed. Maria went to get something to drink and passed by a group of girls. Maria glanced at them out of the corner of her eye, her eyes glowing with a violet light. A brunette looked at Basara from a distance and blushed. The girls talked, and after a while they let out a squeal. They looked in his direction and began to murmur, then pushed a blushing brunette closer to them. "Excuse me, what's your name?" "My name is Basara." "Nice to meet you, Yo Aiko. You know I wanted to ask you if you wanted to join me." Basara blinked, looked at the girl and noticed how she gave him a nervous smile. "Well, I'm a bit busy and, I knew it. I told the girls that cute girl was your girlfriend, and they still made me come. I want to cry." The brunette pointed at Mio and covered her face in embarrassment. The redhead quickly negotiated. "He's not my boyfriend." "Really? Then surely you won't mind and will accompany me for a while, right?" "Well, The brunette quickly became more assertive and began pestering Basara with insinuations that the brunette couldn't ignore. Mio watched this, and despite knowing she should be happy that her familiar was becoming popular, she felt a pang. She didn't like him as that girl who wanted to eat Basara. He was her hero, the one who saved her and promised to take care of her. Under the surprised gaze of the chestnuts, Mio fell to his knees. "Hey, are you okay?" The girl took her hand to help her up, but, Mio let out a soft sob and slapped her away. Basara was surprised by this action and looked at her closely. He placed his hand on her forehead, causing her to flinch at the touch. "You're all red, and you're boiling." He looked at her with concern, which seemed to exacerbate whatever Mio was suffering from. Fortunately, Maria arrived with a soft drink in hand. "Hey, what are you doing, Maria?" "I'm glad you arrived." Mio suddenly fell silent and seemed ill. The albino girl approached the redhead and inspected her, then checked her neck and noticed that the tattoo was shining. This is bad," he said, then waved his hand in front of the brunette and cast a spell to make her go away. Maria looked them both in the eyes and put on an awkward smile. "We have to take her to a place where no one can see us." Basara approached and stopped Mio, making her lean on his shoulder while making faces and trying to silence her sobs. Basara quickly led Mio to a spot out of the way, his urgency causing him to bump into someone, but he continued on. They arrived at a motel, and Maria hypnotized the receptionist to get them a room. The three of them were inside a room, and Mio was sitting on the bed. "Okay, we're in a hidden spot now." "Maria, what's happening to Mio?" Maria gave a nervous laugh as she spoke. "Haha, I think the curse is activated." "Curse?" Basara stopped, looked at Maria with an inquisitive look that only made Maria more nervous. "Tell me more." "Ahahaha." Maria took a step back and raised her hands in surrender. "You see, the most important part of the pact is ensuring the servant's loyalty, and when this one disobeys his master, a curse is activated. The effect of the curse depends on the magical essence used, and since I am a succubus, your magical essence causes an aphrodisiac effect, I conclude." Maria ascending. Basara inhales a deep breath. Basara shouted so loudly that Maria took several steps back. "Why didn't you tell us about something like that? We could have used Mio's magical essence instead. It was important to transfer the pact to the clan heir. The pact will strengthen them to unimaginable levels. Besides, the lady's magical element is fire, and the curse would make her burn, and by using her bloodline the gravity magic would crush her body and kill her in a painful way. And with you things don't get any better, of course. Using his bloodline would be disastrous, and even with his other power to use, Basara knew the outcome would be worse. Banishing shift. The power Jean stole from a dragon and Basara inherited. The true manifestation of annihilation. So avoid danger to the young lady with a curse that will only make her faint or, at worst, fry her brain from excessive sensations. That's still dangerous. Right. We need to stop the curse. How do we do it? Basara said tiredly. To mitigate the curse brought on by disobedience, the servant must be subjugated by the master. Subjugate? Basara tilted his head. He looked at Mio and saw how she had a delighted expression, and how she bent her body back and forth. Just do it, and help me with this. She looks incredibly mating. Why? Basara gulped. Well, what do I have to do? Very simple. Just touch it. Touch her where? Anywhere will do. The young lady is extremely vulnerable to stimulation at this point. She's matingly inexperienced, so she won't resist the pleasure. You'll probably need a few minutes for her to yield. Wait, Maria, are you saying that Maria gave a loving smile to the startled Mio. Hang on a bit, miss. My master will make you feel good, very good. This is for your well-being. Mio calmed down as he looked at Maria, and knew everything would be okay. She was his self-proclaimed servant, the one who had saved him from dying. Everything she did was for his own good. It's not as if just because you're a succubus gives me the inhuman desire to see you, the noble lady of the Abaddon clan, humiliated, ruined, and defiled. Lost and naughty and indulging in the pleasures of the flesh, making the most delicious expressions of a whose brain has been melted by pleasure. Maria sobbed and put on a naughty full smile while blushing and hugging herself. Hurry up, my lord. Touch Mrs. Erogenous spots and help her reach ending. Didn't you say I could touch any part of the body? Yes, but that means it'll take longer to help the young lady through the pleasure. If you really want to help her, you'll have to hit her most potent spots. Unless, of course, you want to start with some foreplay. I am a fan of that too. Phew, alright. He couldn't let Mio die over something so stupid. He sat down next to Mio. Coop, get away from me, idiot. If you do anything, I'll kill you 100 times. Sorry, but you're this fast. Basara approached and firmly held her arms so she couldn't resist. The mere touch of his skin got a loud reaction from Mio. Ajah! Her skin was very hot, and her voice exhaling with pleasure touched a nerve inside Basara. He gave a deep sigh, and did what he had to. Reaching out with one of his hands, he began to unbutton Mio's uniform, removing her tie and unbuttoning her, leaving her exposed as she tried to force herself into the bathroom to cover her bulbas hidden only by a pink strap. The curse was strong. That alone explained how when he began to caress her foot she was submerged in a sea of pleasure, shuddering and letting out a sweet and intoxicating voice. Mio lay back on the bed panting in a sensual tone. Ah! Basara's hands slid down her back, and with a simple click, he unclasped her bra. He took the garment and threw it off the bed. Kaya? Mio tried to cover herself, but her hands were held. Not by Basara, but by Maria. Don't resist, miss, this is for your own good, Maria whispered to him in a sweet tone. Mio could only stare at Basara as her body was held down, and her insides filled with a sweet sensation. Basara sighed heavily, and stretched out his hand. Hyan! He pressed one of her bulbas. The sensation was exquisite. That firm yet flexible mass of flesh that could cover his 5 fingers and yet gave him a pleasant warmth. No, let go! Basara proceeded to knead those bulbas with great dedication, causing the girl to gag, who twisted her hips back and forth in a frantic rhythm. So they continued until what happened? Ah! Hi! Yawa! Mio's body was struck by a brief spark, one so strong it raised every hair on her skin. A feeling of absolute pleasure filled her, and it slowly drained away, all the while her body experienced a state of relaxation. Mio forgot to breathe for a moment. But then I let out a long breath filled with hot air. I can't believe it! I really did it. Shame consumed Mio, and would have lingered in her mind if not for one detail. WWHY? The effect of the curse still lingered on his body. No, miss, that's not how it works. The curse is activated by going against the master. While saying this, Maria put Mio's head on her lap and forced her to look at Basara. Look closely. This is your future master, to whom you must swear your eternal loyalty and devotion. I love devotion, Mio murmured. Her mind was in chaos, and she couldn't form complex sentences. Maria smiled as only a succubus could and licked her lips. My lord, would you release your aura? Demons are naturally drawn to power, so it will make the process easier if you imbue it with your essence. Basara didn't reply. Instead, he exhaled a sigh with which he released his aura, an aura of a fiery emerald color that had red and gold flashes. Mio's body was enveloped by that aura. The sacred and demonic energies penetrated her skin, passing through her pores and filling with her essence. Mio's demonic senses were specialized in detecting and manipulating magic, so when that dominant aura entered her body, it pierced her soul. Ah-ha-8. Hiawaya! Mio's senses were stimulated to a level never seen before, feeling a level of pleasure as high as if Basa had penetrated her. He sobbed and screamed, snorted and drooled with an expression truly clouded by pleasure. Mio moved her dizzy eyes and saw a boy looking at her. She saw Basara still. Basara, is he my master? Her thoughts clouded. A tremor of happiness ran through her body at the thought. The instinctive desire to serve a higher existence. Because when Mio looked through those bright emerald eyes, she saw power and the will to dominate, bravery and the will to fight, caring and the desire to protect. Mio saw through those eyes a future, a savior, and a family. She wanted to serve him, to swear loyalty and pleasure. She wanted to submit from the depths of her heart. No, too, but he couldn't. The curse burned through his body again. Maria sighed, but she didn't look disappointed. I'm sorry, my lord, but we'll have to repeat the process until the young lady submits to you. She doesn't seem sad or unhappy about it. Basara leaned on top of Mio, making sure to grind his knee into the girl's manhood. Mio let out a sob and tried to resist, and perhaps Basara would have stopped. But when he looked into her eyes, he found himself unable to do so. Those tearful pink orbs that showed tenderness, desire, fear, and odi, but above all else they showed the desire to be subdued. Mio's submission exercise lasted a long time, but no one could say how long. The only thing that was clear was that with Mio's last, most strident scream, the curse was quelled. Mio now rested lying on the bed, completely devoid of clothes and absolutely exhausted. She resisted 9 times before submitting completely. Your great miss, shouldn't you say something about it? You're his servant, that's why I'm so happy. Miss is under the care and service of the clan's heir, the son of the Queen of the Abyss. It couldn't have turned out better, but that's not right. We're cousins, Basara spoke tiredly. Bah! So what? We're demons. Demons don't develop genetic mutations from gene mixing like humans. For us, it's the best way to preserve blood purity. Basara wanted to argue with that, but he knew it would be useless. Maria was a demon and a succubus. Even though she might look human, she wasn't. Trying to tie her to her common sense would be useless. Even worse, Basara noticed that Mio was subconsciously trying to submit from the beginning, but her human upbringing prevented her from doing so. But what made him most nervous was noticing that, to an unconscious degree, Basara himself understood and accepted these customs. I guess it's not worth it to make you think like a human. Basara sighed tiredly. By the way, Mio didn't disobey any of my orders. I didn't even give her one, and the curse activated out of nowhere. The status of vassal means bending one's will to one's master. One form of disobedience is intending to monopolize one's master's attention. When that girl approached you, the lady must have gotten jealous and accidentally activated the curse. Maria giggled. The heart of a pure maiden is always an exciting experience to behold. Wait. How do you know that girl came on to me? You weren't there when she approached me, and we didn't tell you, Basara said with a suspicious tone. Maria was suddenly overcome with nerves and let out a guilty laugh. Well, I wanted to speed up the process of submission on the young lady to strengthen the pact, and Maria swallowed. I cast a spell on the girl to make the lady jealous. Sorry, I see. Basara let out a sigh. Aren't you angry? You know, you hide the curse from them and set up this scenario. I thought you'd be mad at me. It's not up to me to be. The moment she said that, Maria's head was firmly grabbed from behind. It went without saying who did it. Maria broke out in a cold sweat when a piercing voice called her. Maria, come with me. We need to talk. Mio dragged Maria by her hair while the albino screamed and kicked. Wait, miss, my hair hurts. Please, I just wanted to help. Mio ignores the pleas as he drags her into the bathroom. For the next few hours, a symphony of screams and creaks is heard, as well as the sound of burning flames. Basara deployed a barrier to muffle the noise in the bathroom and decided to lie down on the bed. He pretended not to hear the pleas for help. Issei and Rainer left the motel. Yuma, who insisted on being called Rainer, wanted to visit the park before they parted ways. Issei briskly approached with a grin from ear to ear. Issei was happy. Mom, Dad, your son is a grown man now. He puffed out his chest with pride, and anyone who looked at him would see the expression of a life-winning man. The fact that he had lost his virginity to you, Rainer, made him want to dance with excitement. He couldn't wait to tell his proud friends, saying something like he'd stop spying on girls because it was a virgin thing to do. They'd cry and rage with envy, chasing him around to beat him up while he just laughed. Issei was so caught up in his thoughts that he didn't notice when they arrived at the park. "Thanks for such a fun day, Issei," Reiner said, standing in front of a fountain. She smiled at him with such a cute smile that it made Issei's heart race again. "She's so cute," he thought as he sighed and smiled. He felt the need to express himself. "Haha, you're welcome. I feel like I'm the one who should be thanking you. Since we first met here, I feel like my life has gotten brighter." Issei scratched his cheek in embarrassment. "What I want to say is thank you for coming into my life. I love you, Reiner. Be sincere with a smile. A sincere smile without deception. A smile that would fully convey your true intentions." Why did Reiner suddenly go quiet? The girl looked at the ground in silence, then looked at the starry sky with an ironic smile. "Oh, father, you are too cruel. Does your twisted sense of humor take pleasure in seeing me suffer so ironically?" Reiner asked the sky in a tone similar to that of someone reading biblical texts. Wait, Reiner is a Christian? More importantly, why does she say God makes her suffer? A pang of doubt bothers Issei, so he decided to ask. "Reiner, what are you talking about?" It's nothing. Just an annoying memory," she assured him with an angelic smile. "You know, Issei, I have a problem. Some guy is pressuring me to do something I don't want to do." "What? Tell me who it is. If that guy keeps bothering me, then I'll make sure to teach him a lesson." Issei roared with righteous indignation and the determination to face whatever came. Reiner found it adorable, but she knew that even if Issei went with 100 humans, he wouldn't be able to do anything against Lars. "Calm down, Tiger, you don't have to fight, but you can definitely do something for me." "Really? Tell me. I'll do whatever it takes to keep them from messing with my girlfriend," Issei declared with absolute conviction as his eyes seemed to burn with determination. "That look bothers Reiner. Would you die for me?" "Huh!" Issei tilted his head, visibly confused. He rubbed his ears to make sure he hadn't heard wrong. "Excuse me, could you repeat that?" said Base. A pair of wings appeared on Reiner's back. "Would you die for me?" His black wings rose imposingly as a dangerous glint appeared in his eyes. Issei gasped, shocked and paralyzed. His body refused to move as his eyes saw Reiner sprouting wings like an angel's. "Angel, you are an angel," Issei whispered as his heart pounded like crazy as the urge to kneel and pray overcame him. "Oh, please no. Don't throw yourself on the floor and sing praises. It's quite annoying and useless. It's not like he's going to help you." A pink flash shone in Reiner's hand, and then she held a glowing spear made of light. The sound of the wind whistling and flesh being pierced was Issei's only warning as Reiner threw the spear and it pierced his stomach. He tried to pull the spear back, but it disappeared, leaving a gap from which blood oozed. Issei felt dizzy and fell to the ground. As his gaze fell on Reiner, he could only whisper a question. "Because, sorry, but you're a threat to us. If you want to blame someone, blame him for putting that sacred gear inside you." "Sacred what?" His voice didn't come out. He spat out blood as he watched Reiner suddenly become shocked. "Huh! Someone destroyed the..." Reiner's voice was low. Not because she was whispering, but because her ears were dulling. She flapped her wings and took off from the ground, disappearing into the night sky. Issei didn't feel the breeze of air generated by the flapping of his wings, nor the sensation of the hard asphalt or the pain of his wound. He felt nothing but the cold that embraced his body. Am I going to die? The weight that tormented his mind made him want to relax into unconsciousness, but he knew that if he did, he would die. No, what will happen to my friends? What will happen to my parents? Matsuda and Motohama would lament and Aika would probably accompany them. His colleagues? They probably wouldn't miss him. Your parents? They'd probably cry, but it'd be awkward if they discovered your collection of porn magazines. Why do I think about such stupid things while I'm dying? Hundreds of images came to his mind, from his birth until now, all repeated so quickly that it made no sense. But he identified those memories. Questions he asked himself as a child were answered, details he never noticed became visible, and his regrets became present. He lifted his hand weakly and saw the red of his blood. Red like Naru's hair, but especially like Rias Gremry's hair, that beautiful girl who attracted his gaze almost magnetically. He wished he could have touched her bulbas. At least I didn't die a virgin. Wait, in consolation. He looked at the stars, so numerous and bright in that dark sky. His eyelids were heavy, he was short of breath. Issei closed his eyes with one last thought. God take care of me. Issei opened his eyes as he felt something in his stomach begin to tingle. He looked in amazement at the new boy basara Tuju. A silver glove covered his hand. It was placed on his wound, while a white light emanated from his fingers. He watched in amazement as the blood stopped flowing. Basara Tuju said something he couldn't hear. Maria Nerose arrived and placed her hands on his wound, a light shining from her hands. Issei breathed heavily. His senses returned, and with them the excruciating suffering of death. The pain in his belly was stabbing and made him groan. The taste of iron in his mouth was unpleasant. The smells he hadn't been able to detect intoxicated him. He felt relieved, but then he heard. His intestine was pierced through and through. It's torn. Basic healing magic can't save him. That scared him. He felt different from the moment he'd been stabbed. That magic was bringing him back to his senses, and he could clearly feel himself on the verge of death. No, I don't want to die. He tried to think of something. He searched through his memories for something that would help him, but it was useless. Too weak to live, Issei clung to life with all his will, but it was useless. His senses faded again, the cold enveloping him. The last thing he saw was Basara Tuju holding a chess piece. No. FZZZT Fu. Something happened. Her strong emotions resonated deep within her, shaking her soul. Something felt right, something that fit perfectly on his left arm. It connected on a fundamental level that united body and spirit. There was heat in his arm, a heat that burned into power, a power that moved with his emotions, and before the eyes of the world, the ethereal gears attached to his soul turned with his desire to survive. Maria, Mio, and Basara stared at him in surprise. He wanted to say something, but exhaustion overcame him, and he fell unconscious. But just before I lose consciousness, I managed to hear something. Boost! Haida Issei lay reclining on a bed. After finding him half dead and awakening his sacred gear, Basara decided to take him home for inspection. Maria was just now using an analysis spell on him, and when she finished, she gave the results. His wound has healed completely, both inside and out. It's only a matter of time before he wakes up. Basara sighed. That's good. But how did it heal so quickly? And what's that in his hand? Mio pointed at the red metal gauntlet with golden spikes and an emerald gem embedded in it. That, miss, is one of the sacred gears you were telling me about. Although this one is quite special. That was an understatement, Basara commented. It's called boosted gear, and it's a Longinus class. Does one of the 13 kill gods? And the surprise for Mio was great, and Basara still did not finish the situation. After leaving the motel, they tried to go home, and despite the fact that both Mio and Maria knew the city and Basara was trained to memorize the places he visited, they got lost. They wandered around for hours. Luckily, they arrived at the park just as a barrier was raised. Basara recognized the magic used on the barrier from similar encounters. As an exorcist, he concluded it was that of a fallen angel. They broke through the barrier and fence, and found a half-dead student. They tried to save him with magic, and to make matters worse, the brunette manifested a cursed Longinus, and used some strange ability to heal his wounds. Yes, that eclipsed my surprise at learning that you, my lord, can use healing magic. Mio looked at Basara curiously. Are you a magic swordsman and a healer too? You're full of surprises. Basara felt uncomfortable at the mention of his healing magic, but he didn't show it. Maria continued to examine Issei's body while commenting on something. You know, this boy is very weak, and he doesn't seem to have any magic resistance, master. Why don't you reincarnate him? That? Yes. This is a perfect opportunity. We have an unconscious Longinus user, who probably used it for the first time and is weak enough to be reincarnated even without using the mutated queen too. Maria, are you suggesting we reincarnate him by force? Mio sounded strongly in disagreement with the idea. Look at it this way. Now that he's awake, at some point some faction will try to recruit him, and we're in demon territory. Maria paused and pointed at Mio. The demons will have no problem forcibly reincarnating him and enslaving him, subjecting him to a life of slavery. You, miss, would face a similar fate if they managed to capture you. We can protect him and help him grow stronger, gaining him an invaluable ally and preventing him from falling into enemy hands. Both cousins remained silent in the face of Maria's arguments. Mio wanted to object, but couldn't find any valid reasons. Basara, for his part, understood Maria's logic. The supernatural world is a cruel one where power is worth more than gold. The opportunity before them was worth more than winning 100 lottery tickets. I knew what any faction or organization would give to be in his shoes. Being able to recruit a god-killing weapon wielder, with a situation where he would be seen as a hero, only a fool would pass up this opportunity. However, you're talking as if Haidu is just a weapon and not a person, he said, with a critical and repressive tone. Basara wasn't someone who considered people tools, much less weapons. Beneath that god-killing power, there was still a human being, a child, even. He had experienced firsthand that he was seen only for his power, for the destruction he could and had caused. Yuji, I didn't mean to sound that way. Maria bit her tongue, but she didn't seem at all sorry. She argued about the benefits for both them and him. They would gain one of the most powerful offensive powers in existence, and he would gain protection, training, and riches as the primary servant of the Abaddon clan. Not to mention the advantages of becoming a demon, such as increased strength, an infinitely longer lifespan, and enhanced senses. You even came close to reincarnating him. Basara felt a metaphorical blow, but remained unyielding. That was meant to revive him, but he was able to save himself. We won't forcefully reincarnate him. This is ultimately his decision, and the whole reply was silent. The music penetrated his ears. His eyes scanned the room and discovered he was inside a church. The edges of the pews were decorated with bouquets of white flowers, and sitting on those pews were all the people he knew. His mother was crying with joy. His father was filming with a camera. Matsuda and Motohama were shouting about how he couldn't understand how he could get married before them. The girls in the clubs were lamenting for the bride, while Aiko was commenting something I couldn't quite make out, but I was sure it was something obscene. And you, do you accept Issei as your husband to love him, care for him and be with him in the good and the bad, in wealth and poverty, in health and sickness, until death do you part? Huh! Issei turned around and looked at the priest dressed in white robes holding a Bible. He looked down at himself and noticed he was wearing a black tuxedo. I accept. And that voice made him shudder. Issei slowly turned his head, and immediately discovered who was in front of him. Dressed in a beautiful white dress and with her face covered by a veil of the same color, was the woman Issei loved the most. The brunette's legs felt heavy as he felt like he was short of breath. If there is anyone who opposes the union of these souls in holy matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. Issei wanted to speak. Something inside him wanted him to scream, to run away, but his body didn't respond. I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. She lifted her veil, and Issei's heart began to beat fast, enough that he thought it might explode. Looking at him with those amethyst-like violet eyes, Yuma Hayate gave him a beautiful smile. Issei's body began to burn when the girl brought his face closer while extending her lips. It's so hot, and it wasn't a metaphor. Her body felt as if she were on fire, and the sensation only grew stronger as Yuma drew closer, but Issei lost himself in those eyes and leaned closer. He ignored the heat, ignored the pain that warned him not to, the grip on his waist, and the kiss. The heat vanished from his body and was replaced by satisfaction. They kissed until they had to break away for air. The sound of music, shouts, and applause faded away. Only the woman could concentrate in front of the man who gave her another of her beautiful smiles. Issei, she whispered to him. Her heart was beating with joy. His heart stopped with her next words. Would you die for me? The world went black as a pair of black wings sprouted from Yuma's back. They were now back in the park. A spear of light pierced his abdomen and dissipated. Issei felt like he was dying. His body struggled to hold on to life, and it tormented him. Would you die for me? Would you die for me? Would you die for me? The words repeated themselves in his mind as the world turned black and feathers of the same color floated in the void. Would you die for me? No. Y-O-A-Q-U-L-Q-U-D-S-P-R-T-R-E. He uses a spell, and the world burned in flames. Issei woke up screaming. He panted wearily as he looked up, and it didn't take him long to notice the bandages on his abdomen. He brought a hand up to his face, and was surprised when the metal touched his cheeks. On his left arm was a thick, red, metallic gauntlet that extended to his elbow, with golden spikes pointing backward at its sides. He also discovered he was in a room, but not one he recognized. The door opened and, to his surprise, Basara Tuja poked his head out. "You woke up," he said, "Tuja-san." Why am I here?" "Well, it's a bit difficult to explain." "I have to explain a lot of things." Basara walked over and sat down in the chair next to the desk. He looked at him with the expression a father would have when explaining flowers and bees to his son. "Tell me, what do you know about the fallen angel attacking you?" "Angel fallen?" "Yes." "Did you see that it had black wings?" Issei immediately remembered how a pair of black wings sprouted from Reiner's back. "Yuma." Issei swallowed saliva. "She's was?" "My girlfriend. We were on a date, and then she stabbed me with a flashgun. She said I was too dangerous to live." "Yes, I think I know why." Basara frowned slightly. Something about those words was ironic to him. "That's why." He pointed at his gauntlet. "It's called a boosted gear, and it's a sacred gear. Sacred gear are magical devices created by the God of the Bible so that humans can defend themselves against the supernatural. This one came with you at birth, and it's gone when you die." "Magic? God?" Issei's eyes widened in surprise. "Yes, again, there's a lot to explain." For the next few minutes, Basara filled Issei in on the supernatural scene. In short, all the legends, myths, and religions were real and not just stories. Magic exists, and there are multiple intelligent races that inhabit their own worlds. I told him about the fallen angels, who were once angels who committed sins and lost God's grace, but weren't corrupted like the demons. By the end, Basara could swear smoke was coming out of Issei's ears. It was simply too much to bear. "So what saved me from dying was this?" Issei asked as he raised his hand with the boosted gear. "Yes, though as far as I know that sacred gear isn't a healing type. According to Maria, you didn't manage to regenerate your body. It's more like you replaced those human parts with parts of dragon." "I'm just as surprised as you are," Basara said in admiration. Issei felt more encouraged. It was the dream of every young person and adult to have magical powers, and he had just discovered that he was born with a legendary magical device, which saved his life. "Thank you? I still can't believe this is a legendary magic weapon, one made by the god himself. I feel like the protagonist of an anime," Issei declared happily. Basara responded the same. "For normal people, I guess it must be something incredible like in those animes you mention." Issei stopped and looked at Basara in confusion. Don't you know what an anime is?" "I have a vague idea, but they're not of interest to me. I spent my first 10 years training and then went to Europe to become an exorcist. He returned to Japan a little over 2 months ago." "That's terrible." Issei looked at Basara in horror, as if he had stepped on kittens in front of him. "And you call yourself a young Japanese man? I need to show you anime as soon as possible." Issei leaped out of bed and landed on his feet. His gaze spoke of purpose and determination. "Wait. You just recovered, you should get some rest. This is more important. We need to nourish your mind with knowledge. We'll start with One Punch Man, Kimetsu no Yaiba, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I'll instruct you enough until we can move on to the Kings of Seinen like Berserk and Vinland Saga." Issei took Basara's hand and dragged him while reaching out to open the door. The door opened from the outside, and Issei's hand hit something soft and pleasant. Issei looked up and found Mionaru's face, filled with shame and anger. Issei looked down, finding his hand pressing against one of Mio's bobas. He looked at Mio, then at his chest, then at her face, and so on a few more times. Issei let out a nervous laugh. It was an accident. His hand gave a squeeze to those prominent bobas. That was also an accident. Mio silently raised her hand, and Issei could see how the girl's hand was covered by a rather sinister reddish aura. "I'll kill you 100 times. Slawaweya, X." Basara sighed tiredly. Mio's blow was so strong that it knocked Issei out, forcing Maria and him to heal him again. They had to gather some of his lost teeth to put them back in. "If you get smart again, you'll lose more than just a few teeth." That's what Mio told him when the brunette woke up. Issei nodded fearfully, but without any regret. Maria faked a cough and changed the subject. "As you know, Issei-kun, your situation is quite peculiar, to say the least." Issei understood. From what Basara had told him, he was truly lucky to be born with a magical relic. "It would be very irresponsible of us to let you go defenseless after discovering the supernatural. This is a harsh world, ruled by power where the weak and newcomers are crushed. You could be enslaved by a demon, or die by a fallen angel. Issei was startled at the memory of his near death, and Basara looked at Maria suspiciously. The succubus continued speaking. So I thought we'll teach you the basics of magic and your sacred gears so you can defend yourself. Immediately everyone gasped in surprise. Issei let out an eh sound. Teach me magic? Real magic? And Maria approached and forced Issei to look into her eyes. Think about it. Your dazzling figure standing atop a massive mountain, face to face with the dragon as you point your boosted gear at it, golden flames surrounding your figure. The admiring cries of men and the amorous gazes of women, Maria told him in a grandiloquent tone while hugging him by the neck, and her beautiful violet eyes shone. Women, Issei gasped, his eyes shining with naughty and anticipation. Does that mean I can get a harem? Of course. The supernatural world is full of beautiful women, both genetically and magically, and all of them are drawn to power. If you become strong enough, you can have any woman at your feet. Unable to contain his excitement, Issei shouted "Yhoo!" with his hand raised in the air. Maria found this reaction amusing and decided to imitate him. Mio rolled her eyes in exasperation at the pervert, and Maria, "We'll start tomorrow." "Miss Mio, could you guide Issei into the door?" "Hey! Why do I have to accompany the pervert?" "Please, miss, I'm sure our guest would prefer it that way," he said, pointing at Issei, who nodded cheerfully. "Also, I need to speak with the master." Both Mio and Issei looked in the direction of Basara, who was standing with his arms crossed. "Mio, could you?" "I'll make it up to you later." Mio stared at Basara for a few seconds, then let out a humph, and told Issei to follow her. When they were finally alone, Basara looked at Maria questioningly. "You used hypnosis on Hayadu," he affirmed. "Correct." She confirmed it without a hint of shame. Basara frowned. "Maria, we talked about this." "I know. And I didn't do anything that would prohibit me." "You just hypnotized Hayadu. I'm sure I told you not to try to brainwash him." "Nope, you told me not to trick him into forcing his reincarnation. You didn't say anything about convincing him to be on our side or training him. Besides, he himself would have been happy to learn magic. Still, use magic on him." Maria fell silent for a moment. She made eye contact with Basara's serious eyes without losing her carefree smile. "My lord, being under Jean Tuju's protection, many pesky enemies will cower and not attack us." Basara also raised an eyebrow. "And what does that have to do with hypnotizing Hayadu?" "Everything. Jean Tuju is feared, yes, but he's also hated. If they find out we're related to him, many of his enemies won't hesitate to kill us." Maria lost all jovial expression and replaced it with a face full of seriousness. "I know you're strong, but a man like Jean has made enemies at the level of gods. Many noble demons of great power could come to attack us. Do you think you can defeat an ultimate class demon or some greater god?" Basara wanted to object, but his words died on his lips. He knew his father had made dangerous enemies, some powerful enough to wipe out all of Japan. The most obvious were the demons he fought with in the Nippon Demonica War. The Agar's clan held a special grudge against him for attacking their territory and nearly wiping them out, as well as for fighting the Mao Lucifer of all demons. "As a servant of the Abaddon clan, I will follow your every command, but that is why I must insist. Having the current Red Dragon Emperor one on our side is an unseen-a-lifetime opportunity. I can accept that you may not want to reincarnate him by force, but at least let me make him our ally. Perhaps there will come a time when he decides to reincarnate voluntarily." Basara thought about Maria's words and considered them. He found that despite his own principles and dislike for manipulating Issei, he prioritized the well-being of his family. "All right. You can befriend Hayadu and teach him magic. I won't deny you making him our ally, but you can't in any way tell Hayadu to become my servant without my permission." Basara wasn't a hero, but he still wasn't a heartless man. Maria walked forward briskly, straightened her body, and performed a military salute. "Yes, sir!" Maria retreated under Basara's weary gaze. The brunette pulled out his evil set of pieces from his necklace, took one of the pawns, and looked closely at the green crystalline piece. The piece, along with the other pawns, glowed. Moreau dared to step out of his window and pointed at Issei, making the piece glow as if reacting to his presence. "What does this mean?" It was when they found Issei dying that the pawns reacted. Somehow unknown to them, the pieces manipulated the magic within their necklaces and landed on Issei's body while glowing. Basara considered letting Issei die. He didn't want to reincarnate him, knowing how unbearable it would be for a human to live hundreds or thousands of years watching their loved ones die. But the pieces seemed to call to him and convinced him to almost revive Issei. Tuju's son sighed, put the pieces in his necklace, and went out to prepare dinner. Inside her apartment, a beautiful woman with black hair and green eyes was sitting on her bed. She was focused on texting on her cell phone, something she had grown accustomed to after spending 6 years in the human world. So you've already got a job at Ko Academy? Yes. I managed to get in as a nurse, but there's a problem. Ornis replaced the teacher. That guy is persistent. Do you think he's a spy for the 10 Thrones? I don't think so. It's just one of my fans who keeps mourning my downfall. Do you think it will give you problems? The woman snorted, amused at the mere idea. She continued writing. No. I can take care of him. Very well. Please look after Basara for me. If he's anything like me in attracting trouble, then he'll need a guardian angel. He has a guardian goddess. You have nothing to worry about. The two exchanged a few more messages before saying goodbye. The woman lay back on her bed and put her phone away. She sighed heavily, staring at the ceiling. Everything has become so monotonous and boring since you've been gone, she murmured as she looked at a portrait hanging on her wall depicting 2 women. It showed her with her golden hair next to a woman with long, snow-white hair. The woman sighed. I need to rest. Tomorrow will be the first time in 16 years that I've seen your son. And with those words she settled down to sleep. Basara ate lunch peacefully. Mio, Maria, and Issei were also eating beside him. When lunchtime finally arrived, Maria had insisted they eat lunch together on the roof like true anime protagonists. Issei and Maria quickly became friends, which wasn't a surprise. They both had similarly kinky tastes and hobbies, which led to an immediate friendship. You know, this morning I ran into a girl dressed as a nun on my way to school. She seemed lost, so I led her to the abandoned church. She was wearing one of those sacred gear. Basara almost choked on his food. What was that sacred gear like? They were a pair of silver rings. He said they were a gift from God and used them to heal a child's scrape. Sounds like a twilight healing. That wasn't a good sign. He didn't believe it was a coincidence that a person from the church wearing sacred gear was walking in demon territory. Did the Vatican decide to make a move? I looked at Maria and she nodded in agreement with her thoughts. Most likely, a group of illegal exorcists is roaming the city hunting demons. That girl is probably part of that group. Maria made a face of disgust. An exorcist? I don't think so. That girl was too nice. Didn't that fallen angel seem kind to you too? Issei flinched at Mio's comment. He lowered his head with a sad expression. Basara gave the girl a reproachful look. Wait, I didn't mean it that way. I mean, people can pretend to be friendly with others, that's all. Mio became defensive and looked at Issei nervously. Hiatus smiled awkwardly. No need to apologize, Naruza-san. You're right. Maybe I shouldn't be so trusting. Mio clicked his tongue in disgust. Why did he have to feel sorry for that annoying pervert? Maria decided to speak up. What the lady meant was that it wasn't your fault. There was no way you could have known that girl wanted to kill you, but let's not talk about depressing things. Cheer up, Issei-kun. I'm sure someday you'll find a girl who will love you and accept your perversions. That seemed to cheer Issei up. I doubt it. His attitude is disgusting, and his spirit was stabbed to death. Basara watched the conversation in front of him in silence. He had been silent for a while, staring off into the distance. He turned his gaze to the water tank. Get out of there. I don't like being spied on. Everyone turned their attention, and from behind the tank emerged a flawless-looking blonde boy. He gave her a dashing smile. You have good senses. Why were you spying on us? Basara didn't mince his words. The blonde man's smile tightened. It wasn't my intention. My name is Kibayudo, and I came because President Rias wanted to invite Tuju to chat in the occult club room. Issei let out a muffled groan. The thought of Basara chatting with the most popular girl in school and hanging out with the elite made him jealous. Basara, on the other hand, raised an eyebrow. Why would Rias Gremry want to see them? He thought it might be related to the incident at night. Very well, I just hope you don't mind if I bring Hayato with me. There is some matter that requires his assistance. Kiba thought for a second and then nodded. He asked them to follow him, and Basara said goodbye to the girls, assuring a worried Mio that everything would be okay. They walked through the corridors until they reached a lonely building far from the academy, right next to the small forest. Kiba opened the doors and allowed them to enter. Wow! This place is so elegant. Basara thought that was an understatement. The interior of the place is finely paneled with wood, with paintings and pictures adorning the walls, armchairs arranged around a table, an elegant desk in the back, and a huge red circle with the Gremry emblem carved into the floor. Akino Himejima and Kaneko Tuju were sitting on the sofas drinking tea. Akino greeted them cheerfully, while the younger girl just gave them a sidelong glance. Basara looked to his left and blinked as he noticed the shadow of a naked figure through a curtain. That's a bathroom? Oh my, sorry to bother you. The president wanted to take a shower to cool off. She'll be right back. The curtains opened, revealing Rias wearing a towel to cover her voluptuous body. Ignoring the two boys' stares, she let out a relaxed sigh. How I like bathrooms. Akino handed her a set of clothes and Rias closed the curtains again to get dressed. Issei was euphoric with excitement, his face burning and a goofy grin plastered on his face. He kept muttering incoherently about Rias being naked. Basara, for his part, remained impassive. Was she trying to eat him? Probably. He knew the demon's tactics, so he didn't rule out the possibility and remained alert. When Rias came out fully dressed, she walked over to the desk and sat down. She gave them a small smile. Tuju, I'm glad you accepted my invitation. Yes, it turns out something came up that requires your knowledge. He pointed at Issei, who flinched nervously at the attention. But hi, he stuttered nervously, unable to look away from Ryasuo's bulbas, which made him look adorable in the girl's eyes. Hi to Issei. I remember hearing about you. Really? Yeah. You're the guy the girls from the kendo or swimming club always beat up for spying on the locker room. Issei nodded with an embarrassed smile. Pervert, Kaneko said. Issei felt an arrow sticking in his heart, a funny scene for Rias. Basara spoke to get back on topic. Last night Hayadu was attacked by a fallen angel. Instantly the place was filled with tension, and Rias's expression turned serious. A fallen angel on my territory. We couldn't kill her, but we did scare her away. Due to the extreme sensations, Hayadu awakened a sacred gear. We had to explain to her about the supernatural world. Rias looked at Issei with a beautiful look of compassion that made the pervert's heart beat. I understand, and don't worry. I understand this is new to you. I won't kick him out of town or make him pay a tribute if that's what you're thinking. Hayadu and his family can stay in Kwa without worry. Basara nodded with a smile that Rias reciprocated. The Gremry looked at Issei with interest. Tell me, Isseikin, do you know what your sacred gear is? Issei tensed up, looked nervously at Basara, and Basara answered with his gaze what we practice seemed to be telling him. I don't know. After a while it faded away and I don't know how to activate it. But Basarazan and Maria-san are going to teach me how to use magic. That only seemed to intrigue Rias more, but she decided not to press the issue. She returned her attention to Basara. Leaving that aside, I wanted to discuss something with you, Tuju. Is this about the incident 2 nights ago? Something like that. You see, when I watched you fight, I noticed great strength and skill on your part. Basara raised an eyebrow. He realized where the conversation was going. I was thinking about. I will not join your peerage, Gremry. Rias was startled. She hadn't expected to be interrupted or rejected, much less before the proposal. You didn't let me finish. But that's what you were going to ask me, right? That's why you brought me here. An awkward silence fell over the room. Rias's servants stared tensely at Basara, while Issei remained silent, too nervous to speak. Basara wanted to be straightforward and make it clear that he wouldn't be joining them. Not only because being an exorcist, the son of Jean or the son of Sapphire, would cause a huge political stir, but he had no desire to serve anyone. Rias intends to negotiate. Reconsider that. There are many advantages to rejoining my nobility-enhanced physical abilities, protection from other factions, a lifespan of thousands of years. I'm not interested in something like power. I don't need protection if I plan on living like a normal person, and please no. Why would I want to live that long? I don't mention that I already had all of that at a much higher level than what I was offering. My family is rich. I could bestow upon you great riches. Tempting, but no, Rias was starting to get desperate. She thought about offering him women, but she bit her tongue before even speaking. She was completely desperate to avoid being turned into a mere mating trophy. And would she really consider subjecting another woman to that same fate? She refused. Basara looked impassively at the girl's gloomy expression and pretended to cough. May we withdraw, Miss Gremory? And Basara didn't say anything else. He took Issei by the shoulder, and they left the place. The rest of the day had been quiet. Classes continued, and the group headed straight to Issei's training. I forgot my notebook. Go ahead. Basara walked through the lonely halls of Qua Academy until he reached his classroom. He tried to open the door and noticed it was locked. Did you lose something? Basara turned around and found a beautiful, middle-aged woman with long, black hair that fell to her hips. She was wearing a green sweater, a white robe, and a dangerously short miniskirt. Her body was sensual and voluptuous from head to toe. She wore glasses that covered her eyes, green eyes like yours. Everything about her screamed sensuality, and Basara had to use all his strength not to gasp. Don't you think it's too late to be here? I forgot a notebook. I was hoping it was still open. Aren't you a little forgetful? Normally I should tell you to go away and wait until tomorrow. The woman smiled as she said, usually, but I'll make an exception. The woman took a set of keys out of her pockets and walked to the door, swaying her hips and giving Basara a good view of her rear end. Shit, how can someone be so mating? Why? I screamed internally. The woman giggled, clearly noticing their stares. Do you enjoy the view? Sorry, don't worry, it's normal for young people your age. My name is Chisato Hasegawa. I'm the academy's nurse. There's no need to be so formal. Even so, Chisato silenced him by placing a finger between his lips. The woman leaned in and gave him a smile, but not a sensual or poker-like one. It was a genuine smile that radiated happiness. You have some beautiful ones, Hasegawa-sensei, Basara gulped. The woman was very close to him, so close that he could feel her large bobas pressed against him. Chisato reached out with her other hand and grabbed Basara by the back of his neck, pulling his face towards hers as she turned him 180 degrees. Tuju couldn't help but feel his body burning, and his nose filled with the woman's chamomile-scented perfume. There was a click, and Chisato released him from her embrace. He turned around and found the door open. I have a faculty meeting to attend. You can come by to pick up your notebook. Just be sure to close the door on your way out. Thank you. Amused by Basara's nervousness, Chisato winked at him. Don't tell anyone I gave you permission. Let's keep this a secret, Basara. With that said, the woman left, leaving a lonely and excited Basara to let out a heavy and hot sigh. That was dangerous. She reminded him of Maria, but with a more mature and less blatant air of maturity and sensuality. He picked up his notebook and closed the door, realizing something. When did I give you my name? Rias was in a bad mood. After being rejected by Tuju, she sat down in one of the armchairs to drink tea. The girl looked at her teacup in dismay, which worried her noblewoman. Rias, come on, don't be sad. What does it matter if that boy didn't want to join your peerage? There are hundreds of better candidates eager to join. Rias sighed. She appreciated her friend's concern, but she wasn't in the mood. It's not just that, Aquino. I'm running out of time. My parents told me they moved up my engagement to Riser, and I don't know what to do. Aquino frowned, clearly displeased by what she heard. She rubbed her friend's back sympathetically. I'm sure we'll come up with something, just don't worry. That Haida boy, for example, seems promising. Kaneko said she felt a dense layer of power over him. Rias perked up slightly. She, too, noticed something odd about Haidu, but it wasn't her senses, it was her instincts telling her the boy had potential. Maybe it's been a couple of hours since the boys went to make their contracts. Do you think they'll do well? Of course. Kibikun is charming, and there are many older women who need his services, although Kanekikun has always had problems because of his attitude. Aquino covered her mouth with her hand as she giggled like a lady. Rias smiled and leaned back in her seat. Yes, maybe you're right. I'll try to relax tonight. Do you want to play chess? For your training, we'll start with the basics, how to use your sacred gear, Maria said like a teacher teaching a student. Basara was at her side. They had decided to go teach Issei after school, with an excited Issei willing to listen to anything. They were in a forest on the outskirts of Kwa, away from public view, wearing their uniforms. Mio didn't want to come and accompany Issei due to her enormous dislike, so she stayed home. Issei-kun, show us your boosted gear. Issei obeyed Maria's request and concentrated for several seconds until the boosted gear materialized. Maria had taught him how to manifest and dispel it before leaving, and luckily for him, using a sacred gear was instinctive. It was like using a limb you didn't know you had. Maria examined the boosted gear with her hands, and her reaction was one of ecstasy. Oh, I can see it clearly now. It's incredibly complex. I can feel the thousands of magic circuits spreading through the spiritual structure of your gear. Shifting codes generated by a soul-fused core. Succubi and incubi have a nature linked to naughty, that is in their nature, but the pleasure and enjoyment they feel in things not linked to mating is far greater than that of any other race. Maria has many tastes and hobbies, but one of her greatest pleasures, along with serving as a servant of the Abaddon clan, is researching magic. For a restless and chaotic mind like Maria, magic opened up an infinite range of possibilities to experiment with. That said, upon inspecting the Longinus class sacred gear, one of the greatest masterpieces in techno-magic, Maria was feeling the equivalent of baiting. This Maria-san, you're drooling all over me. Huh? Ah. Of course. As I was saying, sacred gears are linked to human souls, so using them is as easy as simply wanting to, since they respond to the wielder's wishes and circulate magic in a similar way to demonic power. So I just have to wish for it. Yes. But you have to do it with all your might. Understood. Issei raised his hand and concentrated, willing the magic device to work. Boost! He felt his body flooded with power, strengthening his muscles and filling him with an exciting sensation. It worked. Now try to push yourself as hard as you can. You need to know your limit and how much you can push yourself without damaging your body, Basara said, to which Issei nodded nervously. Exactly 10 seconds passed, and a second boost was heard. In total, he was able to perform 4 boosts. That's it. If you overexert yourself, you'll hurt yourself. Issei nodded, feeling sweat running down his forehead. They then continued testing the limits of his strength by having him punch trees. To their surprise, he managed to dent the wood of the trunks. They made him run, move, and generally exercise. They weren't teaching him how to fight yet, they were teaching him not to break his bones from a wrong move, in Maria's words. The rest of the afternoon was exhausting, as his urges quickly faded, leaving him on the floor, exhausted but still compelled to train. It wasn't until nightfall that the torture stopped. We'll continue tomorrow. Here's my number. Call me if you need help, Basara told him as he and Maria rode off on their bikes. Issei walked wearily through the dark streets of Kwa. He thought about everything he had learned in such a short time. His ex-girlfriend was a fallen angel, he had a legendary weapon, magic exists, God exists. God, that was a subject I hadn't given much thought to. While I was a believer, I wasn't devout, and I believed in following the teachings in my own way. He thought about what the Almighty would think of him, and ended up remembering the nun from that morning. The girl was a godsend. Kind, caring, and humble. She gave him the impression of being somewhat naive, but that only enhanced her virtues, given her such purity. She seemed like a true angel, but what if he was really just pretending? He couldn't get Naru's words out of his head. Just a few days ago, he would have dismissed them or given them no importance. But after Yuma stabbed him, he couldn't be sure. He brought a hand to his stomach as the phantom pain invaded him. How could I trust that girl not to be a ruthless killer? I couldn't trust her. I couldn't trust any girl, because if Yuma-chan, his dear friend and beloved girlfriend, tried to kill him, who could he trust? Argh! A piercing scream interrupted his thoughts. He walked to the source and came to a closed house where the screams grew louder and more desperate. Aid! Issei didn't think twice. He kicked down the door and rushed in, not caring about the consequences. Upon entering, he was greeted by a shocking sight. Blood. On the floor, on the walls, even on their shoes. Severed bodies and entrails scattered everywhere. Issei couldn't resist and vomited as he fell to his knees, disgusted and terrified in equal parts. Like, who could have done this? Issei-san? He shuddered. Fear flooded his body and forced him to vomit again. He recognized that voice, but he didn't want to. He wished it was a lie, that it was anyone but that innocent little girl, but in the end, he had to accept it. He looked up, and his fears were confirmed. Same conservative attire, Same long golden hair, same voice, same green eyes. He immediately became bitter, and weakly whispered her name. Asia, Asia. Issei stood up, and for a moment he saw conflicting emotions in the girl's eyes: terror, disgust, and confusion. He didn't stop to think as he stood up and glared at her. You did this, you're an exorcist. At his accusatory cry, the girl backed away in fear. It's not true. I didn't want this. Father Fried. Oh. Asia-chan, who are you talking to? A man emerged from the shadows. He was tall, with pale skin and white hair. He wore a blood-stained priest's robe and held a bloody knife. Did I miss one? Thanks for pointing that out, my lovely assistant, he exclaimed in a feverish tone that filled Issei with rage. You killed them, of course, he said with a sneer of laughter. These heretics have sold their souls by making pacts with demons. It is my duty as an exorcist to sacrifice them so that they may find God's forgiveness. Issei clenched his fists in frustration. Who did this guy think he was, killing all those people just for being an exorcist? He seethed with rage at the. However, his rage wasn't directed solely at him, it was also directed at Asia. How could he possibly agree with that? Father Fried, please stop. God will not forgive you for doing this, Asia begged through tears. Fried responded with a deep, unhinged laugh. You're still too naive, Asia. This is our job, to free the world from the corruption of demons and heretics. Crazy man, boost! Issei couldn't hold it in any longer and summoned his boosted gear as he ran towards Fried, who looked at him with almost childlike enthusiasm. Issei let out a scream of fury as he threw a punch into the air, but his breath was knocked out of him when Fried kicked him in the groin, leaving him lying on the ground in agony. Surprise! It doesn't matter if you have a nice toy, there's nothing a kick in the balls can't fix, he said as he walked across his face. He was about to kick him again, but Asia grabbed him by the robe and dragged him back. Father Fried, please stop. Slap! The girl fell to the ground after receiving a hard, disdainful slap. Fried let out a light laugh as he heard the blonde's soft cries. Asia, Asia, Asia. You need to learn not to be a pesky and stick your nose into things that don't concern you. Issei gritted his teeth as Fried grabbed Asia by the hair and forced her to her knees. His heart ached with every cry of suffering she made. Let her go. Do you know each other? Asia-chan, you didn't tell me you'd been out fing strangers. Too don't. Fried silenced her by placing a finger between her lips. Shhhh, don't worry, the Lord is merciful and will be able to forgive him. I whispered to her in a comforting tone, then I tear off the top of her clerical robe, revealing her bulbas covered by a pink bra. I'll make sure to purify every inch of your body with my manhood liquid. Faced with such a terrible act, Asia could only weep. Tears streamed down her delicate face as her sobs filled the room. She felt fear, shame, and revulsion, but the emotion that most disconcerted Issei was resignation. Asia was going to resign herself to being raped by that madman among blood and corpses. Because she had no choice, she didn't have the strength to resist. Boost, but Issei does. The brown-haired boy stood up and rushed like a rabid animal against Fried, who threw Asia aside to kick him again. However, this time Issei covered himself and stopped the kick with his hands. My turn. Issei grabbed Fried by the ankle and used all his strength to grab him and slam him into the ground. Shit! That hurt, you son of a... He couldn't finish, having to roll to avoid a stomp. Fried maneuvered and was up in a flash, using the knife to stab and slash. Boost! The two began a brutal confrontation. Fried used brutal but refined slashes against the brunette, while Issei punched and swung without any strategy and protected himself from the weapon with his gauntlet. What should have been a quick victory for Fried turned into a fight for survival. No matter how skilled he was, Issei's superhuman strength, stamina, and speed were overwhelming him. Crash! A bad punch from Issei ended with his fist accidentally going through the wall. Fried didn't feel fear. No, he felt euphoric. The adrenaline rushing through his body and the brush with death were addictive. He burst out laughing like mad with every second. Asia looked at everything with a surprised look. Boost! With his fourth power-up, Issei landed a punch that sent Fried flying and slamming into the wall. He spat out blood and several teeth, but never lost his maniacal grin. Eggs, what's so funny, murderer? Losing because of a little shit what a fing joke. Fried pulled a revolver from his robes and fired. Issei covered himself with his gauntlet, but Fried wasn't aiming at him. Bang! Father! Asia screamed as the shot pierced her leg. Tears of fear and pain spilled out of her eyes. Asia! Issei was completely enraged, and just as he turned his gaze back to the wretch to make him pay, slash! Fried lunged and plunged the knife into the man's stomach. The weapon barely pierced the brunette's skin. The pain and surprise made him fall, and Fried took advantage of the opportunity to stab him again. 4, 5, 8 times, no one kept track. The only thing noticeable was Fried's savagery and madness, and his desire to gut him. Issei let out screams and shrieks. He felt every stab, every gruesome stab that tried to force its way through and spurt into his insides. He felt his vision blur, his mind fading into the darkness. The pain faded, and he felt cold, as if he were lying in winter snow. The stabbing stops, and his tired vision makes out Asia struggling with Fried. They talk and shout, but all Issei can hear is a meaningless, high-pitched beeping. Asia cries and begs with all her might. Blood is running from her wound, she hasn't treated it yet, but she insists on healing Issei. Fried yells at her, hits her, and spits on her, but Asia is stubborn. What the F? Why is that idiot laughing? Fried says something with a nasty grimace, and Asia looks horrified. She alternates her gaze between Issei and Fried, and finally looks at the brunette full of tears. No, Asia, what are you doing? The blonde girl removes her tunic, revealing her modest pink underwear. She gives Issei one last look before unclasping her brow. Fried laughs and carelessly squeezes one of Asia's bobas, but she doesn't refuse. She doesn't stop sobbing even when Fried forces her to kiss him, yet she resists, bringing their faces closer together. Don't do it, Asia! Run away from here! Asia! The brunette's mind was a hell of horror and fury. His heart burned with rage, and his mind screamed incessantly. He couldn't let that rape her. Boost! Crack! There was an unpleasant sound of his bones crunching as a wave of pain shook him. At that moment, he remembered Basara's words and knew he had surpassed his limit. Reset. The strength left his body, and at that moment Issei could only cry. Asia was scared when she heard the crunching sound and saw the blood gushing out of Issei's body nonstop. Asia sighed, looked into Fried's eyes and let him kiss her. And with one last murmur, Issei fainted. Issei woke up violently, shouting Asia. He instantly groaned as his body grew tired, and as he sat up he realized he was still in the same blood-soaked house, with entrails and rotting corpses surrounding him. He spat out a strange taste in his mouth, and was filled with confusion as his face and his own clothes felt sticky. He remembered the fight and brought his hands to his stomach, discovering there was no sign of any wounds. Where are they? He tried to stand up but failed miserably. His legs were still tired, so he had to drag himself around. I noticed that his sacred gear was no longer there, so a long time must have passed. Issei froze. As he crawled, his hand found a simple piece of cloth, a pair of white panties. Something wasn't right. Those bragados had a light blood stain on them, and above all, they were sticky, very sticky. Issei threw the panties away in disgust when he recognized the traces of manhood liquid on them. Asia, his voice broke. No, 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 no. He finally acknowledged Fried's words and the reason Asia had stripped naked in front of him. Tears of frustration spilled from his eyes as he pounded the floor. No! Issei screamed until he felt like he was going hoarse. For the first time in his entire life, he felt the weight of true hatred. A burning hatred that threatened to devour everything. The boosted gear manifested, its green gem glowing in tune with its wielder's hatred. I, the one who would wake up, the hair. Issei stopped. He remembered how Asia had given herself to Fried just to save him. All his hatred cooled and was replaced by apathy and depression. For an hour he sat there, thinking about what had happened, crying like a scared child. When Basara gave Issei his phone number, he didn't expect him to call so soon, much less while he was asleep. Issei sounded empty. He told her he'd fought a crazy exorcist, sent her an address, and told her to come. Basara arrived quickly, and was horrified to see the scene of such a brutal crime. Upon entering, he saw Issei curled up in the fetal position, silent and overwhelmed. Fortunately, he found no injuries. Basara called the police, then picked up Issei in his arms and used his demon wings to carry him flying. Issei remained silent the entire time. Upon arriving at the Tuja house, Basara allowed her to use the bathroom and clean the blood off herself, then woke up the girls and gathered them in the living room. Why did you wake us up? It's midnight, Mio complained as she crossed her arms, making her bobas stand out. Maria looked closely at Basara's clothes. He was wearing going-out clothes, but a red stain on his green shirt made her suspicious. Did you go hunting for some demon that discovered us? No, don't even fight, it's about Hayadu. Ugh, what about the pervert now? He said he was fighting an exorcist. When I got there were corpses and guts strewn all over the place. Both girls grimaced at the thought. Hayadu was sitting in the middle of it all alone. This is the first time he's seen something like that, so I ask you to be understanding. They both nodded. Even if Mio didn't like Issei, she understood the seriousness of witnessing something like that. She checked with her parents herself. Issei didn't know how long he spent in the shower, but he made sure to clean himself from head to toe. He wanted to get rid of every bit of dirt on his body. After finishing his bath, he dressed in a change of clothes Basara lent him. He walked into the living room wearing black shorts and a red shirt. He awkwardly greeted the tenants as he sat down on one of the sofas and collapsed to sleep. Hayadu, tell us what happened. Issei did so, telling them everything that had happened. How he found that grotesque scene, Asia and her fight with Fried, how he was knocked down, and how he woke up hours later. Fried, what bad luck. Do you know him? I met him a couple of times while working at the Vatican. He was a violent, unhinged lunatic, a failure in every field except murder. He was excommunicated a year before I retired, an exorcist then reneging. Basara nodded to Maria's reasoning. Rogue exorcists are quite dangerous, and most have execution arrest warrants out for them. So the girl is also a renegade exorcist? Mio asked, which angered Issei. She's not a murderer, Issei yelled, and immediately apologized. Mio looked offended, but remained silent. She tried to stop him, even begged him not to hurt me. Basara interrupted him in a soothing tone. Calm down, Hayadu. If what you say is true, then it's likely that he tricked the girl into following him. Issei nodded fervently. That made sense in his mind. There was no doubt that the girl was a victim of that wretch's schemes. Assaizen, why don't you stay here tonight? I'm sure you need some time to clear your mind. We'll talk to your parents tomorrow so they don't worry. Not wanting to stress himself out any further, Issei agreed and went to the room Maria pointed out to him, closing the door and collapsing onto the soft bed. For the remainder of the night, Hayada Issei decided to sleep. Basara didn't know what to think. Fried was definitely a threat who needed to be hunted down, and while the most rational course of action would have been to inform the demons in charge and let them deal with him, the truth was that the situation seemed too suspicious to be a coincidence. A street exorcist, a deluded nun, and a fallen angel, all illegally in a city of demons. Something didn't add up. It's not uncommon for fallen angels to recruit stray exorcists, and the fact that both groups lived in Kwa made him think this was no exception. The real question is, what is their goal? Whatever it was, he'd find out. That group was undoubtedly a danger to his family's safety, so he'd be ready to act. Maria, you told Hayada to go to my room, Mio angrily rebuked, to which the succubus responded by shrugging her shoulders. He needed a place to sleep. Then give him your room. Miss, calm down, look on the bright side. You can take advantage of this time to sleep with the teacher. Basara interrupted his thoughts when he heard that. Mio let out a loud what? She looked at Basara with a face full of shame. Maria nodded. Of course, it is a servant's duty to sleep next to his master to warm his bed. But, don't be embarrassed, miss. It's a natural thing universally accepted in hundreds of cultures. If it's because of the noise, don't worry. I'll put up a barrier so as not to disturb our guest. Maria, yes, teacher? Without giving her time to react, Basara summoned Brynhilda's gauntlet and hit Maria on the head. Oh! What was that for? The succubus whimpered through her tears as she rubbed the bruise. Basara just sighed and walked to his room. Mio will sleep in your room and you will sleep in the bathroom. What? Master, you can't do this to me. Everything I do is in the name of tradition. Master, don't ignore me. Master, master! Hundreds of meters from the Tuju residence, Lars watched intently from the roof of a building. The masked man could see clearly thanks to his mask, and he couldn't help but think about how complicated his situation was. The daughter of the Abaddon clan, the Red Dragon Emperor, and the son of the God of War. What a troublesome group! Lars crossed his arms as he considered his next move. His objectives were problematic in varying degrees. This is where a normal person would have chosen to approach them one by one, making sure to take the least amount of risks at the cost of losing the element of surprise. Lars didn't. He knew he could take them on at the same time, and he would, but he needed to be patient. He unfurled his futuristic wings, which glowed before disappearing in a purple flash. A few days had passed since that night, and although Issei could claim that he was getting over it, his goal remained the same: to get revenge on Fried. He's been training like crazy these past few days, strengthening his body and perfecting the use of his sacred gear. Classes were over, and as always he chose to walk through the park, the same park where Yuma almost killed him, and where he met Asia. He chuckled, maybe the place was cursed or something. Issei? Issei stopped, turned abruptly in the direction of that voice, and felt his breath escape him. Asia, thanks for listening to my video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment below your favorite part. Sayonara, see you in the next video.